Chapter 51:20. Once Zichen's words came out, it immediately caused a huge uproar. They were all jade pendants, but the other 8 shops sold them at the same price. 10% off here? For a moment, everyone couldn't believe that this was real. How could there be such a good thing? If you buy a jade pendant, the price today will be the same in the future, Zichen said. As for whether you want to buy a jade pendant, it's up to you. We won't force you. After that, Zichen turned and walked in, leaving the door to the crowd. Everyone immediately entered. In fact, they were still very nervous because they weren't sure if there was something fishy about the price. But after entering, the price was clear. There was nothing fishy. Nothing at all. Everyone became excited one by one. There were even some people who didn't buy anything, and planned to buy a jade card first, in case of an emergency. Big Beard and Michi also walked in. With their strength, they could only see a few things. But even so, they were still shocked. Everything was 10% off, including the black crystals they dug up. The two of them stood aside and looked for a long time, but no one showed any interest in the black crystals. Soon, the place was overcrowded. The two of them were squeezed out. This business is too good. The two of them were very emotional. Fortunately, it would last for a few more days, so they weren't in a hurry to buy resources. There were many people going in and out of the door. Some were going to buy resources, and some were going to pass the news back. After all, this was a discount that had never happened before. Let's go and dig up more crystals. The use of the jade pendant in Zichen's shop spread quickly. When the other 7 halls of spiritual law heard about it, they snorted. Obviously, they didn't believe it. There was no business in the world like this. 10% off? Wouldn't they lose money? Did they really think that the Hall of Spiritual Law was their own business? Since they didn't care, they didn't say anything. Some of them even arrogantly said that only those with jade pendants could buy things at the same price. Otherwise, they would raise the price by 10%. This led to the business of the Hall of Spiritual Law that Zichen was in becoming more and more popular. Because of this, Kant couldn't handle it alone. Zichen introduced Milia to him. Kant went to look for Hobson again, this time for Wu Jingshi. In this spirit-breaking place, there were martial crystals, but ordinary people were not qualified to get a share, unless they were from the spell-breaking palace. After Hobson learned of the situation, he gave Kant a share without hesitation. Maria took the martial crystals to the first floor and set the price at 10,000 Dao force per piece. This immediately caused a sensation. Under normal circumstances, the Hall of Spiritual Spells would not provide martial crystals, as they were extremely rare and were the best choice for increasing one's cultivation. 10,000 strands of energy seemed to be a very high price, but after it was displayed, it was swept clean by people. Of course, the real price was 9,000 Dao energy per piece, and the discount was real. When the people from the other shops heard about this, they were all stunned. If that was the case, where would the profits be? Finally, they gritted their teeth. After 5 days, the 10% discount was gone. Just as these people were waiting for everything to return to normal, they realized that business was still not improving. The number of people who came every day was pitifully small. In addition, they implemented a trading model without a jade token to increase the price by 10%, so many people left. The business of Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells was still very good, but this time, the people who came had jade pendants, and they still had a 10% discount. As for those who did not have jade pendants, they could get one in time, but the price this time was 100 Dao force. In this way, another half a month passed. When the other shops felt the crisis and finally reacted, Zichen's business had already taken shape. If they allowed the 10% discount, they would definitely lose money. As for going to cause trouble, when they thought of the Hall Master's name, they all gave up. Zichen even dared to kill a 6 forces realm spellbreaker, so who would dare to cause trouble for him? After a month passed like this, they finally grew anxious. They sat together and began to discuss how to deal with Zichen in the future. Why don't we get someone to put on a show and say that his things are fake, and that's why the price is so low? As soon as this idea came out, it was rejected. Everyone gathered resources in the same place. If Zichen's things were fake, then theirs were fake too. Naturally, no one agreed with this rotten idea. How about this? Doesn't he want to lower the price? One of them sneered. Then let's have a price war. He gives a 10% discount, we give a 15% discount. I don't believe we won't be popular. Michael, are you crazy? 15% discount? We'll lose money. Immediately, one person expressed strong dissatisfaction. 15% discount is only temporary. We can use an extremely high price to get everyone to come and get some jade pendants. When everyone comes back, we'll set the price again. Of course, we'll have the final say on the price. The person named Michael sneered. Zichen's battle power is not bad, but he's obviously still too inexperienced to compete with the 7 halls of spiritual spells. One person frowned. Then how long do we have to hold on? 1 day, 2 days. We definitely can't hold on, Michael said. Half a month, or at most a month. Zichen's shop will definitely close. At that time, we can set the price however we want. Everyone exchanged glances. Although there would be some losses, if the 7 shops split the losses, they would still be able to bear it. And so, they did as they were told. First, they spread the news, intentionally creating hype. Then, they said that 3 days later there would be a 15% discount. The news quickly spread to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells. When Zichen heard it, he smiled calmly. Don't worry. They won't be able to hold on for much longer. Zichen had Kant by his side. Based on the other party's purchase price, there was a 90% chance that they would still make a profit. Thus, they weren't worried at all about these people messing around. Furthermore, the longer they held on, the greater the losses they would suffer. This was purely a method of killing 800 enemies and losing 1,000 of your own. In response, Zichen didn't say anything. He allowed the other party to give him a discount. In fact, on the day of the opening, he didn't even go to check on the situation. According to Milia, the 7 shops were doing very well. After all, the discounts were low. But unlike Zichen, if everyone wanted to participate in this event, they had to spend 200 Dao energy to buy a jade plaque. And this jade plaque could be used in all 7 shops at the same time. It could be said that as long as one bought a jade plaque, they would be able to enjoy a 15% discount in all 7 shops in the future. Naturally, everyone was happy to do such a good thing. Even if it cost 200 Dao energy at the beginning, many people still gritted their teeth and did it. After all, this was a matter of lifelong profit. After hearing Milia's words, Zichen immediately said, Everyone else can do as you wish. But you are not allowed to go there to get a jade plaque. And no one else in the shop is allowed to go there either. Chapter 51-21. Milia had been shopping with Khan recently. Of course, she knew the real price of some resources. Even if they were here, they wouldn't be able to make any profit, let alone those people. Khan had asked Hobson about the prices of those people, but Hobson told him that it was the same as before. Therefore, the 7 halls of spiritual law were doing this to cheat people. As for the purpose, it was very simple. They wanted to shut down Zichen's hall of spiritual law. Time passed day by day. Zichen's business was getting worse and worse. Only a few people came here every day. Most of them couldn't afford the expensive tokens. They only came here to exchange for 1 or 2 strands of energy. Other than that, there were also some people who came here almost every other day. The resources they bought were all normal. In other shops, they could buy them at a 15% discount. One day, after exchanging for black crystals with Michi, she saw a familiar customer and asked curiously why he didn't go to other shops. It was obviously cheaper. In the end, the customer's answer stunned Milia. Then, she felt warm in her heart. He said, I don't want to see this place close, so I'm doing my best. She told this small matter to the master. After Zichen heard it, he smiled and said, So you have to do well. Don't let those people down. Half a month had passed. Zichen's business was still not doing well. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He stayed in his room every day and didn't care about these trivial matters. Kant, the deputy hall master, hadn't appeared for a long time. Recently, the number of purchases had obviously decreased. Also, there weren't many, so they were all given to Milia. Every time Milia went there, she would be ridiculed. She pretended not to hear it. Michi gave all the crystals he mined to Zichen. During this time, Big Beard hinted that he could raise the price appropriately. Michi refused because no one was buying. In fact, he didn't understand why the master wanted to take these crystals. Moreover, they didn't seem to have any use. It was said that after the storehouse was full, they were all put away. During this period of time, the bearded man attempted to find the 7 shops a second time. However, this time, he was almost beaten to death. After another 10 days, Zichen said, "Everyone, thank you for your hard work during this period of time. The Hall of Magic will be closed for the next 10 days. After that, it will open again." As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed. "Are they really going to close?" Zichen smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm just letting everyone rest. I'll still distribute the rewards for the next 10 days. You will be busy in 10 days, so don't miss it while you're free." Zichen took the ring containing the black crystal stones and took away all of them. When she was about to leave, Maria was told that she didn't want to go out because some people would come to buy things. Zichen smiled and said, "If you don't want to relax, you can stay here and guard the store." Then, he left Pofa City and went deep into the forest. Now, he was very sure that the black crystal contained the power of the Shadow Destroyer, and only he could sense it. Now, he wanted to take the crystals to show the other Shadow Destroyers if they could use them. Entering the forest, Zichen went deep into the forest quickly. Along the way, he would kill any spell-breaking beasts he encountered. He went deep into the forest and came to the entrance. Zichen hesitated for a moment, then walked in. He wasn't stopped. After entering, he saw the people waiting on the Black Mountain. Seeing Zichen come back, they were very surprised and immediately ran over. They still couldn't speak, but Zichen could already understand what they were trying to say. They were all very happy. After hearing the news, the old man walked out of the Black Mountain. "Zichen, why are you back?" Zichen took out the black stone and let them try to see if they could absorb the power inside. Everyone was puzzled, but they still picked up the black crystal. As they tried, the black stone lit up. This was the power of the Shadow Destroyer. It was forcibly mobilized and then released. "It works!" Zichen heaved a sigh of relief. His guess had indeed come true. The black crystal was similar to the Black Mountain in front of him, but also completely different. Because the Black Mountain was the last treasure of the Shadow Destroyer clan, it could release power on its own to maintain the last life of the Shadow Destroyer clan. It was also because of its existence that their souls were not destroyed after death. It also allowed the clan to survive in this way. "What is this? Where did you get it?" After sensing the black stone, the old man's expression immediately became excited. "It was mined from an abandoned mine." Zichen could see that the old man cared a lot about the black stone, so he explained in detail. The old man was very excited. As for the others, they all knelt before Zichen. Seeing this, Zichen hurriedly said no. "You gave them a chance to be reborn. You also gave the Shadow Destroyer clan a chance to be reborn," the old man said excitedly. "You deserve this bow." With that, the old man also knelt. Zichen hurriedly went forward, but he couldn't do anything. Looking at everyone who was crying tears of joy, Zichen's eyes were a little wet at this moment. However, there was still one last step to completely control those black crystals. In Pofa City, there was a very special place called the Pofa Palace. Its meaning was somewhat similar to the Spirit Pofa Palace. This place was meant to suppress the Soul Destroyer clan. Kant came here today and saw the manager called Nankan. The two of them had been together often in the past few days, so they were already very familiar with each other. After Kant walked into the office of the other party, he explained the purpose of his visit. Nankan said in surprise, You want that mine? Kant said with a smile. It's an abandoned mine. With just 2 words missing, the meaning was completely different. Why? Nankin asked in confusion. You know what this mine used to be, right? Kant asked instead of answering. Yes, soul crystals, but it has long been abandoned. Many people have already gone inside to take a look and confirm that it's gone, Nankin said. He was naturally very familiar with those mineral veins. So I plan to buy it, Kant said. It's only because it's abandoned that I want to buy it. Otherwise, I can't afford it. Nankin asked again. Why? Kant said. If I said that I found soul crystals inside, would you believe me? Nankin laughed. Of course, he didn't believe it. Countless people had gone to that place to mine. It was said that there were some black stones after the soul crystals, but they were useless. Seeing that Kant didn't say anything, Nankin said again. Are you serious? A light flashed in Kant's hand, and something appeared. What do you think? When the other party saw the thing in Kant's hand, his expression couldn't help but change. Inner core? Only a law-breaker beast of the 6 forces realm had a chance of forming an inner core. It was useful for both law-breakers and law-breakers. I know that the mine isn't worth much, and it's just a matter of a word from you. But what's really valuable is helping me say a word, Kant said. So, I hope you can say something, Nankin said. Although I don't know what you want that place for, it's not a big deal. But it's still a mine. Even if it's abandoned, it's still the property of the Broken Soul Palace. It's still somewhat difficult to directly transfer it to your name, Kant said. I know, so I'll leave it to you. This is the greatest sincerity I can show. It's up to you now. Then, Kant took out a complete law-breaker beast's corpse. Chapter 51-22. Nankin looked at the corpse of the law-breaking beast on the ground. Only law-breaking beasts at the 6th level state could turn into corpses. Although he was also at the 6th level state, he didn't have the opportunity to hunt outside. The corpse in front of him was definitely a good thing. In addition to the inner core from before, he had gained quite a lot of benefits. A smile immediately appeared on his face, but it quickly turned into a bitter smile. It's not that I don't want to agree, but… Kant didn't wait for him to finish. He smiled and said, I know that it's difficult. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you. So, after it's done, I'll give you a complete law-breaking beast corpse as a reward. Kant, you're treating me like an outsider. That's not what I meant. But don't worry, leave this matter to me. No matter what, I still have some face here. Nankin put away the corpse and inner core with a smile. At worst, I'll do it even if I have to throw away my face. And I'll do it today. Kant smiled and said, Thank you very much. It's almost time for dinner. If you're quick, we can go out for a meal. Nankin's smile grew wider. In this law-breaking city, the weakest people who could eat were at the 6th level state. The price of a meal here was much higher than any resource. Sure enough, connections made things easier. In less than an hour, Nankin came back with a contract. All the formalities are done. It'll take effect as long as you sign your name. Nankin smiled and said, Fortunately, it's just an abandoned mineral vein. If it was in use, I wouldn't have the ability to do that. Kanda took the contract and looked at it carefully. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. The task that Zichen had given him was finally completed successfully. Now, all that was left was Zichen's signature. Then, Kanda took out a complete corpse of the law-breaching beast. In total, 1 inner core, 2 corpses, and a few meals. This price was much lower than what Zichen had expected. Back then, Zichen had specifically told him that he could give Nankin whatever he wanted, provided that he didn't alert anyone else. He was very curious and asked what the black stone was. Zichen told him that he was the only one who could use it. After Kant found out, he didn't care too much. He directly said that if one of them could be used, then it was a waste. No one would fight over it. Because on the surface, there was only one shadow destroyer, Zichen. However, Zichen's warning that one must always be on guard against others made Kant a lot more cautious. Because of that, Zichen had not shown himself the entire time, nor had he expressed any interest in the black crystal. Everything was done by Kant. While they were eating, Nankin asked Kant what he wanted the mineral vein for. Kant said with a smile. He felt that there were more soul crystals inside and wanted to take a look. Nankin smiled and didn't ask any more questions. In fact, this kind of purchase of mineral veins happened often. However, the mineral veins that others bought were the ones that were truly valuable. It was just that when they bought them, they would label them as worthless or worthless. In short, at a very small price, the mineral vein that belonged to the Broken Soul Palace was transferred to private hands. There was only one person like Kant who bought an abandoned mineral vein. This thing was really worthless. In addition, Kant was very generous, so he simply prepared everything in one day. After Kant finished his task, he prepared to go to the Hall of Spiritual Spells to find Zichen. After he went in, he found that only Maria was there. In such a big hall of spiritual spells, she was the only one. "Where are the others?" he asked curiously. Maria told him the truth, which surprised Kant. After knowing that Zichen wasn't there, he was even more surprised. Then, he stayed there and chatted with Maria for a while. Occasionally, people would come to buy resources. The prices were all very good. Lord said that after 10 days everyone would be busy. So, he asked them to go out and relax? Then why don't you go? I have nowhere to go. Also, there will be people coming every day. If they see that our shop isn't open, they will be disappointed. Kant smiled and left. He had his own place. Of course, he wouldn't stay here. Oh, isn't this Lord Kant? Why? Are you going to be someone's dog again? Just as he walked to the area where the Broken Soul Palace was, Kant heard a strange voice. He didn't need to look to know that it was Phoebe. He turned his head to look at his former companions and said, "I say, if you have the time, can't you just focus on cultivation? As expected of a big shot in the 6th strength state. He's already teaching us a lesson," Phoebe said. "Unfortunately, we won't be someone's dog. We can't get the resources and can only struggle in the 5 strength state." The others also looked at Kant coldly. Kant shook his head. He realized that he couldn't communicate with his former friends. Of course, he knew the reason. It was because they had cheated Zichen many times, but each time, they were the ones who suffered the most. Now that they were following Zichen, they felt uncomfortable. But after interacting with Zichen, Kant realized that Zichen was really a good person. Although their philosophies were sometimes different, Zichen's starting point was always good. "Zichen, why are you here?" Kant suddenly opened his mouth and looked in front of him in surprise. Phoebe and the others' faces suddenly changed. They slowly turned their heads, and when they did, they all put on a different smile. There was no one behind. They had been tricked. When they turned their heads to settle the score with Kant, Kant was already gone. Zichen left behind all the black stones on him. The Shadow Destroyers called it the Life Stone. Zichen felt that it was quite appropriate. This thing was really important to the Shadow Destroyers. After rejecting the old man's offer to send him out personally, Zichen carefully looked around after leaving. After making sure that no one was around, he turned back outside. Along the way, he killed a few lawbreaker beasts. His luck was good, and he obtained an inner core. On the way back, Zichen's biggest concern was whether Kant had succeeded. And if he had, how would he explain it to Michi? Actually, if he had succeeded, the mineral vein would have belonged to him. Michi and the others had already broken the rules by going to mine the ore. He had the authority to stop them. But obviously Zichen didn't want to do that. Back at the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Zichen saw Maria. She had indeed stayed behind. After seeing Zichen, Maria told him that Kant was looking for him and would come once a day. Zichen asked her how Kant was feeling. Maria didn't know why she asked this. She thought about it and said that he was fine. Zichen relaxed. It seemed that the matter had been settled. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in a good mood. Then, it was time to talk to Michi. The next day, Kant came again. As expected, he took out the unsigned contract. Zichen asked about the situation. He smiled and said that no one cared about this place. The reward was too much. Zichen smiled and signed his name. Now, the lifestone mineral vein belonged to him. No one could take it away. Chapter 51-23. Kant knew that Zichen was not in a good position to speak in front of Mickey. After all, in the past, they would always be placed on display, giving people the illusion that they were useless. Zichen nodded. This was actually good. Kant asked, "How do you plan to arrange for them? Are you going to chase them away and find someone else to take over?" Zichen said, "There's no need. Give them some special treatment. Every blackstone they excavate will be purchased at the price of 10 Dao force. As for the others, it will still be 5 streams of strength." Kant frowned slightly and said, "Isn't this price a little high?" Zichen said, "I use it myself." "It's not high." Kant nodded. He already knew how to negotiate with Mickey and the others. Then Kant asked again, "Where do you plan to find more miners?" "Well, I plan to look for Marcus. I plan to ask him to keep an eye on these people." This was Zichen's plan. Of course, the prerequisite was that Marcus had the time. Kant immediately said, "Then there's no time to lose. I'll go look for them now. No rush. We can talk about it when Mickey comes back. It's better to talk about this next to the mine. Otherwise, it won't be clear." Zichen and Kant parted ways. Zichen went to look for Marcus, while Kant left the city to look for Mickey at the mine. When Zichen arrived at Marcus's residence, Marcus was surprised. "Why are you here?" "To see you." Zichen sat down. Marcus said, "I've heard about the Hall of Spiritual Spells. What are you going to do? Keep being locked up?" "No rush." Zichen looked at Marcus. "How have you been?" Marcus said, "Same as always." The two of them started to chat about their daily lives. Now, Zichen was very famous. However, Marcus was not very reserved in front of Zichen. However, Marcus was a little emotional. Back then, he was only at the 3 levels of strength, yet he had already grown to such a level. A moment later, Marcos smiled and said, "I won't take up any more of your time. Since you're such a busy person, you must have something to tell me. Tell me, if I can help, I won't refuse." Zichen smiled and said, "You should have said it earlier. Now I can't find anything else to say. If you didn't expose me, I would have been embarrassed." After saying that, the two of them burst into laughter. "I recently bought an ore vein that produces a type of black crystal. I hope you can help me." Zichen explained the purpose of his visit. "Mining? Although I'm not very good at it, I can learn it," Marcus said. Zichen said, "Forget about mining. Help me find a group of people, and you'll be in charge of leading them. For every 2 ores you dig out, I'll give you 1 energy as a reward." "What's the point of asking me for a reward?" "Leave this to me. There's no problem at all." Marcus patted his chest and said, "That's fine. I won't stand on ceremony with you. As for the other workers, each person will be given 1 crystal and 5 energy as a reward." After hearing what Zichen said, Marcus asked curiously, "What kind of ore vein are you digging? Is it a killing crystal ore vein?" "It would be great if it were a killing crystal ore vein. It's a type of black crystal. I have other uses for it," Zichen said. "At first I thought there should be 100 people. As for how many people I need, it's up to you. When will everyone be gathered?" "Today will do. The latest will be tomorrow. With such a high reward, no one will reject it. There are many people in the 3 strengths realm here, and even more people who don't want it." After making an agreement with Marcus, Zichen returned to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. They had already been given 10 days. It was time to settle the matter here. After all, if the door was closed, not only would there be no benefits, but they would also have to pay rent. The rent for each Hall of Spiritual Spells was a huge sum of money. And this rent had to be paid to the Spirit Breaking Office. Kant left the city and went to the ore vein to find Michi. He had been there before, so he flew all the way and was very fast. When he arrived at the ore vein, he walked in with familiarity. He didn't need a torch. His soul power could explore the surroundings. After finding Michi in the ore vein, Kant called them out together. He said that he had something to say. Everyone walked out. There were a total of 20 people. Sir, why are you looking for us? Don't tell me that Sir Zichin doesn't want these stones anymore? Michi was worried. When he said that, everyone's faces changed. Speaking of which, the price of 5 energy for 1 crystal was very generous to them. They didn't need to work too hard every day. As long as they dug out 10 crystals, they would get 50 energy. After such a long time, everyone was used to collecting as much as they wanted. If they suddenly stopped collecting, it would be a great loss to everyone. They would have to work hard for a day like before, but they might not get much. One had to know that when they were outside, they only got 1 or 2 energy crystals a day. Of course, their realms back then weren't as high as they were now. Kant took in everyone's expressions. He smiled and said, "Don't worry. It's a good thing for you." Kant pointed at his feet and said, "This ore vein is now Sir Zichen's private property. You can continue to mine here. You don't have to worry about it anymore." This was originally public property. Although it was abandoned, it was still public property. Ever since they found out that the black stones could be exchanged for resources, they were worried that the people of Shattering Soul Palace would come and take this place away. It was good that they were driven away. If they were punished, it would be troublesome. "Sir bought this place?" Michi was stunned. He asked, "Then what should we do next?" Kant continued, "Next, you can continue to mine." "But Sir said that the price of this harvest, lower?" Michi's heart jumped. "Higher." Kant smiled and said, "Everyone will be paid 10 energy crystals for every black stone you dig. Remember, it's every one of you." The people who were worried before were relieved after hearing this. They all let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, it was just a false alarm. No, there was a big surprise. Just as everyone was excited and cheering, a voice suddenly sounded. "Wait, 10 energy crystals, isn't that too little?" The smiles on everyone's faces disappeared. They all turned around to look. A bearded man walked out. He looked at Kant and said, "Sir, you saw that Michi was immature and tricked him. Why are you tricking us now?" Kant's smile didn't fade. "Your way of thinking is different. Others are grateful for everything, but you say we're tricking you. Then, let's hear it." Ignoring Michi's signal, the bearded man said, "We found this black stone, and we mined it. Now that you've obtained great value from it, you're only giving us 10 energy crystals as compensation. Don't you think it's too selfish?" "Great value?" Kant said. "Then tell me, what's the value of this thing?" "Of course, I don't know what value it is. Otherwise, how could you get the benefits? I just think that you're too greedy. Why are you only giving us 10 energy crystals?" Chapter 51-24. The bearded man looked at Kant. "You can't be so greedy." Michi and the others kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to say a word. Kant smiled faintly and said, "Since you keep saying that you're greedy and cheated, how about this? I'll give you all the blackstones that we mine. You'll take them." "Me?" the bearded man said. "I don't know what they're for. Why would you give them to me? If you don't know what they're for, why do you think that 10 streams of energy is too little?" Kant asked again. "I'm just guessing. You're so cunning. Of course, you have a big use for them. Otherwise, why would you raise the price?" The bearded man looked at them with disdain. Kant smiled and said, "If we kill you now, we'll look unreasonable. Okay, I'll talk to you first." Kant pointed at his feet and said, "Whose place is this now?" "It's yours." "What's wrong?" The bearded man stared at Kant. Kant said again, "Then, if we keep you here to mine, it's fine if you don't feel grateful. But shouldn't you show your gratitude? We could mine before. Why can't we do it now?" The bearded man said, "We're just coolies." Do you think you'll lose out? Kangda said. Look, this is the reason why I'm not willing to continue using you guys. It's all because Zichen wants to keep you guys and wants to raise the price. 1 stone for 5 streams of energy. There are plenty of people in this city. Why should I use your 10 streams of energy? The bearded man was stunned. He didn't know how to respond. Kant sneered and said, You should be thankful that I'm not in charge of this place. Otherwise, people like you would have been kicked out. Before tomorrow, there will be another group of people here. Their price is 5 streams of energy for 1 stone. Sir, let's do as we said. We don't want to be special. Michi held his fist and said, We just want a job. Yes, sir. We don't want to be special. Seeing this, the others hurriedly said. A light flickered in front of Kant as he said, Before we came here, Zichen told me that out of consideration for your kindness, if you wish to stay, you will be rewarded with a martial crystal if you wish to leave. A piece of martial crystal was sold for 10,000 streams of energy in the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Even with a 10% discount, it would still cost 9,000 streams of energy. How long would they need to dig? For a moment, many people were tempted. These martial crystals were given to Kant by Zichen in the end, as he had considered the possibility that someone might leave. As the first batch of people, Zichen didn't want to let them down. Therefore, this piece of martial crystal was the final token of gratitude. However, although everyone was tempted, they were unwilling to leave just like that. They were not stupid. Even if they obtained the martial crystals after leaving this place, the probability of them breaking through to the next realm was not high. Once they broke through to the next realm, it would be easy for them to reach the 4th strength state. But what if he didn't break through? It was obviously unrealistic to come back and dig. It was even more impossible to get a piece of martial crystal with 10 streams of energy. As long as they stayed here and kept digging, they would naturally be able to buy martial crystals when the time came. In fact, everyone was very satisfied with this. However, if Big Beard could really fight for them, no one would object. In the end, even Big Beard didn't choose to leave with the martial crystals. From today onwards, the price would increase, so everyone left. Michi didn't leave. He cupped his fists at Kant and said apologetically, Sorry to trouble you, sir. Kant looked at Michi and said with a smile, In this world you should live well. Michi turned and left. Suddenly, Kant recalled that Zichen seemed to have said the same thing to him in the past. Could it be that the state of mind he used to look at Michi was the same state of mind that Zichen used to look at him? He stopped thinking about it and turned to leave. However, before leaving, he muttered in a low voice, Who said that good people can't be more cunning than bad people? Oh no, I should say that they're smart. He knew exactly what Big Beard was playing at, but he didn't point it out. Zichen would never let good people suffer. However, he would never let a bad person get away with it. After Kant returned, he didn't look for Zichen directly. Instead, he went to look for Marcus. Unfortunately, he didn't find him. Kant knew a little about Marcus. After his immediate superior was killed by Zichen, and Zichen disappeared, his life was just ordinary. Although he wasn't disliked, he wasn't highly regarded either. This should be one of the reasons why Zichen went to look for Marcus. As for the other reason, it was naturally because he trusted him. Early the next morning, Kant went to look for Marcus again. At this moment, he was here with more than 100 people. When he saw Kant, he was a little surprised. Before Zichen arrived, Kant called Marcus aside and told him some things. Marcus nodded repeatedly, indicating that there was no problem. After that, Kant went back. After Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells closed for 10 days, the other halls of spiritual spells finally started their second round of operations. Speaking of which, they were really patient to be able to endure until now. The 20% discount from before was still valid. However, this was on the premise that the price was increased by 30%. The next day, when everyone went there and saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. They wanted to find someone to reason with, but all 7 stores were offering the same price. It was like everyone had spent 200 streaks of energy to buy a token. Then, the price they paid was actually 10% higher than the original price. There was really no room for reasoning. Some people thought of Zi-Chen's Hall of Spiritual Spells and immediately rushed over. However, when they saw that the door was closed, they were all dumbfounded. They were even in despair. They had already guessed that the 7 halls of spiritual spells were up to no good. However, they were all hoping for a fluke. They didn't expect that this store would actually close. There were more and more people outside. In the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Maria asked, "Sir, should we open the store?" The others also looked at Zi-Chen. It was obvious that as long as the store was open, many people would come in a few days. Zi-Chen said, "No. Close it for another 5 days." Maria was puzzled and asked, "Sir, why?" The others were also puzzled. It was obvious that there would be business if they opened the store. "Why not? To settle this once and for all." Zi-Chen turned around and went back. Without his words, no one dared to open the store. Even if there were some regular customers outside. More and more people came. However, when they saw that the store was closed, they all left in disappointment. When the people from the 7 halls of spiritual spells heard about this, they all laughed. They had finally made the right move. Next, it was time for them to come out and talk about buying Zi-Chen's store. When the 8 stores were unified, these people would naturally be at the mercy of others. Everyone was filled with regret, regretting that they shouldn't have been so greedy. However, it was too late now. During this period, someone went to make a scene. However, he was quickly kicked out by the people from the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Time passed day by day. In Pofa City, complaints were everywhere. Unfortunately, no one was willing to redress their grievances. They were hoping for a miracle. However, after 5 days, no miracle appeared. There were even some rumors that they had started to buy the last store, the Hall of Spiritual Spells. However, on the 6th day, when everyone was in despair, a miracle appeared. Chapter 51-25. Just as everyone was in despair, the 8th Hall of Spiritual Spells finally opened for business. However, many people were not looking forward to it. They wondered if this place had already been sold enough. Had the 8 families joined forces? They were all targeting them. With suspicion, they walked in and saw the service staff who used to be there. They welcomed them with smiles on their faces. They were as enthusiastic as before. However, the crowd's mood did not improve. They looked at the prices of the resources. At first glance, the prices were about 30% cheaper than the other 7 stores. This shocked them. They could not believe it. How could it be so cheap? They continued to look at the other resources. They were also 30% cheaper. They looked at them one by one and found that they were all the same. Then, the crowd realized that this was the original price. It had never changed. One of them could not help but ask, "Why didn't these things increase in price?" A female service staff smiled and said, "No. If you have a jade token, you can enjoy a 10% discount." What? The crowd widened their eyes as if they had heard something unbelievable. The prices of the other 7 stores had increased crazily. It was already fair for them to maintain the original price. They did not expect that there would be a 10% discount like before. After confirming it again, the crowd was relieved. Then, they rushed to buy the resources. They were afraid that they would buy too little if they were too slow. They were also afraid that it would be a flash in the pan and disappear the next day. "Don't worry. There are plenty of resources. It will definitely be enough," the service staff kindly reminded them. However, it was useless. The people who came had bought enough resources with everything they had. Soon the news spread. In less than an hour, there was a long line outside the Hall of Spiritual Spells. While they were waiting in line, they were very worried. They were afraid that the things in front of them would be sold out. What if they did not have the same price the next day? Those who walked out of the Hall of Spiritual Spells were very grateful. They did not expect that there would be a merchant with a conscience when they were in despair. At the same time, they swore that even if there was a 20% discount, they would not go there. This time, they almost got themselves killed because of their greed. Maria looked at the scene and was very excited. Her popularity was back. In Zichen's office, a Six Forces realm cultivator was glaring at him angrily. Zichen, are you really not going to sell it? The other party came early in the morning to talk about the harvest. In the past few days, several batches of people had arrived. Zichen looked at the other party and said calmly, "Why should I transfer it? You won't have any business if you continue like this." The other party said indifferently, "After all, you only have one shop and we have 7. If the two sides really start a price war, the one who will die will definitely be you. That's why I'm here today to tell you that everyone should take a step back. If you don't want to sell it, that's fine too. You just have to raise the price by 30%. Zichen looked at the Six Realms cultivator and said, "All of you are too black-hearted. They were all here to help with the business. To put it bluntly, they were all dogs. Why should they oppress these ordinary people? Even if you earn a few more strands of energy, do you really think the people inside will take a fancy to you? Do you think they will think highly of you? As for you embezzling the profits, aren't you worried that your masters will stop giving you bones when they find out one day? Why? Judging from your tone, you don't want to." The Six Realms cultivator snorted. "I don't believe that there are people who have a grudge against power." Zichen said, "No one has a grudge against power, but there are many ways to obtain power. There's no need to use the method of harming others. If you do this, you are destined to fail." Zichen pointed outside. "If you don't believe me, go and take a look. See if your 7 shops have better business than mine." The other party said angrily, "This is because you are causing trouble. You don't follow the rules. With Zichen's actions, it would be strange if their 7 shops had any business." Zichen said, "This is called integrity, okay? You don't even have basic integrity. You rely on swindlers. What right do you have to talk to me about rules?" Zichen waved his hand and said, "Go back and tell your people not to come again. My patience is limited. If they come again, I will kill them. Oh right, if you want to transfer your hall of spiritual magic, you can come to me. Dream on." The other party turned around and left. When he arrived at the door, that person suddenly stopped and said, "Zichen, perhaps we aren't a match for you in terms of strength, but if you want to compete with us in terms of business, then you're too naive. You just have to wait and see." Zichen nodded and said, "Okay, I will wait for you to make your move." The other party went downstairs and saw the crowd at the door. His expression became even uglier. This bunch of greedy idiots. He was so angry that he said that the things here were fake. Unfortunately, he was ignored. Marcus led more than 100 people to the mineral vein. Kant also went once along the way to meet up with Marcus. Everything that followed was left to Marcus. Marcus also met with Mitch and the others. He told them that all they needed to do was to give him the crystals they dug up. After that, Mitch personally brought Marcus to the mineral vein. This place used to be a soul crystal mine, so there were already tunnels dug underground. This time, Marcus wanted to roughly check how many black crystals there were in the mine. He made a rough estimate. With the current manpower, they would not be able to finish digging in a few years. This was a large mineral vein. After stabilizing in the early stages, they would need to find a steady stream of people in the later stages. Moreover, it was not easy to dig. Almost no one in the second force state had the ability to do so. Only those in the third force state could. After that, Marcus began to work on this matter. After the business of the Hall of Spiritual Magic was booming, Kant came back again. He brought Milia with him to do some shopping. During this time, Hobson found Kant and told him that there had been some pressure from above. He said that there were some complaints about the purchase price. On that day, Kant treated Hobson to food and wine. The matter was settled. He had the authority to give a low price. Of course, he could also give the same price to others. However, it was obvious that those people were not as important as Kant, a spellbreaker. Moreover, he was a 6th force state spellbreaker. After returning, Kant told Zichen about this matter. Naturally, it was the 7 shops that were behind it. Since Khan had already settled it, he did not say anything else. Fortunately, there was Kant. With his identity as a spellbreaker, some things were easy to handle. Unfortunately, Zichen, a shadow destroyer, should have had a more noble status. However, no one recognized him here. In the mine with black crystals, Big Beard walked to one of the people and said, "Hey, how many black crystals did you dig up today?" That person did not recognize Big Beard, but he replied, 8. Chapter 51:26. What did you say? The man could not believe his ears. 41 strands of energy. Are you selling it or not? Big Beard was impatient. Of course, I'm selling it. The man quickly nodded. Normally, he could only sell it for 40 strands of energy. Now that the other party was offering him an extra strand, he would be a fool not to sell it. Both parties reached a deal. Big Beard carried the basket and continued to walk forward to collect everyone's harvest. Just by reselling, he could get double the price. Naturally, it was much faster than digging by himself. After the basket was full, Big Beard left. Along the way, the people looked at this scene in surprise. They were puzzled. Where would he get the profit from such a high price? He might even lose money. Michi heard the news and quickly ran over. Kazimo, what are you doing? Kazimo was Big Beard's name. After hearing Michi's voice, he turned around and said, Can't tell that I'm doing business? Michi approached and saw the black stones behind him. There were at least 100 pieces. He said angrily, You're taking advantage of the master's loophole. Big Beard's face immediately became gloomy. What master? He's playing us like monkeys. It's obviously good stuff, but he's giving us such a low price. Michi said, This is what you promised. If you refuse, you can take the martial crystal and leave. Kazimo laughed. Take the martial crystal and leave? You think I'm stupid? It's just a martial crystal. How much energy can it be worth? He patted the basket behind him proudly. See that? I don't have to do anything in a day and I can get a few hundred strands of energy. In less than half a month, I can get a martial crystal back. In a month, it's 2 pieces. In a year, it's more than 20 pieces. Do you think I care about his piece? The others stopped what they were doing. Obviously, they did not understand why Big Beard would say that. They were all curious. I think that since we've promised the master, we should follow the rules, Michi said in a low voice. That's not good. Get lost. Big Beard waved his hand. It's all your fault, you idiot. If it weren't for your incompetence, we wouldn't be exploited like this. If you had fought for us back then, not to mention 10 strands of power, even 20 strands of power would have been possible. Mitch recalled the scene when he first met Zichen. At that time, Lord Zichen saw that his life was in danger and gave him a few strands of power. At that time, he still insisted on selling the Blackstone, but unfortunately, Sir didn't want it. It was only by chance that they met later on did they manage to collect enough. As the person involved, Mitch knew very well that it was just a coincidence. Right now, the 10 strands of Sir's power had already reached their expectations. That was because the people who came later also possessed 5 strands of power. They had already gained a huge advantage. Kazimo, if you want to live a long life, you have to be down to earth, Mitch said. You won't last long like this. Scram! Big Beard pointed at Michi and said, If you dare to tell on me, I will kill you. Then, he turned to look at the others. And you guys, if you dare to say anything, I'll kill you too. To tell you the truth, I know your sir, that's Zichen. I have a very good relationship with him. Otherwise, why would I take your Blackstone? The others naturally didn't dare to say anything. To them, 5 strands of power for 1 piece of Blackstone was already enough. As for the rest, they couldn't earn it, nor did they have the ability to earn it. And you idiots, you didn't use the labor and still dug for yourselves. Serves you right for not having a goal. After Big Beard scolded the original people, he carried the basket of Blackstone and left. Marcus had already set up an encampment outside. After coming out, Big Beard went to find Marcus to exchange for resources. Looking at the crystals behind him, Marcus said, "Today's harvest is not bad." Big Beard smiled and said, "That's because I was lucky. I dug up a lot." Immediately, someone came over to count. In the end, there were 135 pieces. Marcus directly took out 1,350 strands of power and gave them to him. There were no questions, no questions. Seeing so much power, Big Beard's eyes were wide open. Just one trip to the mineral vein, and he gained a few hundred strands of power. If he went a few more times a day, wouldn't he be rich? Big Beard turned and left, entering the mine again. "Sir, this..." The person in charge of counting just now looked at Marcus. Marcus smiled and said, "It doesn't matter." After Big Beard finished exchanging, he went back down. During this time, he looked at his former colleagues who were still working with their butts out. His eyes were full of disdain. "Serves you right for being useless. You'll all die of exhaustion." He walked through the crowd proudly and walked toward the strangers. "How many blackstones have you dug up? I want as many as you have." Soon, he bought another basket. Seeing this, Mitch wanted to persuade him, but he was held back by the others. Obviously, they couldn't persuade him, so they just let him fend for himself. "Sigh, it's a bit heavy. Looks like I'll have to find a few people to carry it for me next time." Big Beard shook his head and smiled. "Fine, I'll do it myself this time. But next time, I'll have to hire someone. This time, both forces will probably fight to do it." He carried the ores and went out to find Marcus to exchange for them. Marcus looked at the blackstones and didn't say anything. He exchanged for all of them again. Big Beard became more and more proud and prepared to go deeper. This time, he had already planned to hire a few more people and buy more. It would be best if he bought all of their gains that day. In this way, he might be able to earn a piece of martial crystal a day. Then, in a year, he would be able to earn a few hundred pieces. It would be difficult for his realm not to improve. As for whether Zichin would interfere, he didn't think too much about it. If he wanted to save face, he wouldn't interfere in this matter. Obviously, he still believed that he only took a small portion and that the majority was with Zichin. Zichin was allowed to earn a lot, but others were not allowed to take a little from him. How could anyone do business like this in the world? Just as he was proudly planning how many martial crystals he would earn in the future, Marcus suddenly called out to him. "Wait a minute. Did you dig up those blackstones yourself?" Big Beard turned around and said, "What do you mean?" Marcus said, "You also know that your price is twice as high as the others. Maybe some of you secretly collected enough crystals from others and then came to sell them. This goes against the original intention, so naturally it's not allowed. So I'm asking, did you dig these blackstones alone?" "I dug them." "Of course, I dug them alone." Big Beard nodded and said, "If it wasn't me, who else could it be?" Marcus stood up and said, "All right, I'll follow you inside and personally watch you dig. Let's not talk about digging up 300 pieces a day. If you can dig up 100 pieces, I'll give you 10 strands of strength in exchange for all the blackstones you bring over." Big Beard's expression immediately changed. "That's not good, right? If you don't prove it yourself, how can I guarantee that you didn't dig these?" Marcus's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Under my control, no one is allowed to take advantage of this." Chapter 51-27. The bearded man was stunned. He did not expect Marcus to be so serious. "Why? Do you have a problem?" Marcus's eyes turned cold. "I didn't say. I dug them up in one day. I dug them up in the past and kept them underground. I took the opportunity to take them all back today." The bearded man braced himself and stammered. "Are you sure? Lying in front of me often leads to a fate worse than death." Marcus warned him coldly. "I'm sure. I'm very sure." At this point, he could only deny it. Marcus smiled coldly and glanced at the entrance of the cave. A few people walked out of the mine. When the bearded man saw them, His expression immediately changed. He quietly turned his head away, trying not to be seen by those people. Now that he was discovered, it was naturally troublesome. "Hey, do you still want to buy Blackstones? We'll sell them to you tomorrow." Perhaps it was a coincidence, but one of them saw the bearded man and even greeted him familiarly. The bearded man pretended not to hear and turned his head to the side, giving the person his back. "Hey, I'm talking about you. Why aren't you talking?" that person shouted again. "You, the one with the long beard!" The bearded man was immediately angry. He turned around and warned, "Don't talk nonsense. I didn't buy your Blackstones. I dug them up myself. You don't admit it? Damn it, all the power is with me. I haven't even used one. Didn't you say that it has something to do with Zichin? Can you sell it at a high price? Are you still going to buy it tomorrow? If you don't, then forget it. If you want to buy it, then tell us and we'll prepare everything for you." The bearded man wanted to bite that person to death. How could he be so stupid? Slap! A slap suddenly landed on the bearded man's head and sent him flying. "You dare to take advantage of my loophole? Do you want to die?" Marcus's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. The bearded man rolled on the ground and let out a wail. He shouted, "He's dead, he's dead!" Marcus stepped forward and kicked the bearded man again. The bearded man began to roll on the ground. "Murder! Murder for no reason! Where is the law?" The bearded man rolled and howled loudly, attracting even more people. Seeing this, Marcus was amused. This guy was really like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. At this moment, more and more people came out. When everyone saw this scene, they all had strange expressions on their faces. Marcus waved his hand, and two men immediately stepped forward and carried Big Beard over. When he came near, Marcus raised his hand and slapped him without saying a word. "Pa! Pa! Pa!" The sound of the slap spread far and wide. Big Beard was still howling. After dozens of slaps, Marcus stopped and stared at the other party. "What did you just say? Law? Are you talking to me about law? I'm not under your control. What right do you have to hit me?" The bearded man said angrily. "I'm Zichen's subordinate. I'm under Zichen's command." "Zichen?" Marcus was amused. "Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Does Zichen know who you are? You're only at the level of 3. You don't even want to be his dog, and you still want to be his subordinate?" After saying this, a few more slaps landed. After that, Marcus looked at the others and said, "I'm sure everyone knows that the price of Blackstones is different. He's paying 10 strands, and you're paying 5 strands. This is a special discount that Lord Zichen gave to a small number of people. It's a pity that this guy doesn't know what's good for him. He actually bought a few hundred Blackstones in private and came here to exchange for a high price." The people who walked up naturally knew this. Big Beard's arrogance was still vivid in everyone's mind. "I only have one way to deal with this kind of guy who doesn't know what's good for him, and that is to kill him." A murderous intent flashed in Marcus' eyes. "This is a warning to others. It's also called Don't Be So Shameless." A chilling murderous intent emerged from Marcus' body. Big Beard, who sensed the murderous intent, was almost scared silly. He did not expect that the other party would want to kill him. Just because he exchanged for a few strands of energy? Compared to what you've gained, what is this? What right do you have to kill me? I only exchanged for a few strands of energy. What right do you have to kill me? Big Beard shouted. Compared to what you've gained, what is this little gain of mine? Marcus said. Let's not talk about the value of these Blackstones first. You only contributed to the mining, so naturally, you can only get the mining reward. This sentence was not only said to Big Beard, but also to those who came out. Only Zichen was kind. If it were someone else, would such a thing happen? On the same day, he drove away this group of people who did not know what's good for them. After listening to Kant's words, Marcus started to dislike Big Beard, Mickey, and the others. That was why today's scene happened. So you dare to use Lord's kindness to take advantage of this loophole and seek your own benefits. Only death awaits you. The energy around Marcus surged, and he was about to kill Big Beard. Only by killing him could he end this once and for all. Wait! A voice came from the side, and Mickey quickly walked over. Lord, can you spare him? Mickey begged. What do you think? Marcus said coldly. For doing such a thing, only death awaits. Lord, since it's his first offense, let him work here as a laborer. He doesn't want any reward. He'll help Lord mine for a year. I only ask that Lord spare his life, Mickey pleaded. Big Beard could tell that Marcus was really going to kill him. He was bold, but he was not fearless. He quickly nodded, indicating that he was willing to mine for free. Marcus looked at Mickey and said sarcastically, Do you think I care about such a free laborer, or do you think Sichin cares? Mickey cupped his fists and said, Lord, we are willing to use our special reward in exchange for Katsumo's life. Marcus sneered. Is that so? Then you have to ask the others if they are willing. Mickey looked to the side. The people who were originally there either turned their heads to look to the side or lowered their heads without saying a word. Obviously, they were not willing. So, you alone are not enough, Marcus said. Or you can find another one. If there are two, I will agree to your request. Mickey's eyes rekindled with hope. Big Beard also heaved a sigh of relief. Just one more person was enough. But it was obvious that Big Beard had overestimated his character. Mickey had also underestimated human nature. Still, no one stepped forward. Big Beard said angrily, Do you have any F*King conscience? Who brought you here to mine? F*CK, now that I'm about to die, you are actually indifferent? The others were still silent. But only they knew what they were thinking. Big Beard pointed to their noses and scolded them as fools. He was much more energetic than he was now. They did not mind Big Beard dying here. Seeing the disappointed Mickey, Marcus suddenly waved his hand and said, Forget it. One then. Then he pointed to Big Beard. Leave all your power and get lost. All? Big Beard was stunned. Is there a problem? No, no! Big Beard quickly took out all the power he had. There were thousands of them. Looking at Big Beard who had nothing, Mickey could not bear it. He took out dozens of power and handed them to Big Beard. Give me all of yours. Once I leave, you won't get anything. You can still mine here in peace. Big Beard took the power and then reached out to search Mickey's body. He only left when he had taken all the power. Chapter 51-28. The bearded man took all of Mickey's energy and left. Mickey was stunned, not knowing what to do. Marcus glanced at Mickey and did not say anything. It was just a little strange. How could such a person live until now without any sharpness? Fortunately, he was not hopeless. At least he did not leave with the bearded man on impulse. A person walked over from afar. After seeing the person, everyone's expression changed. Then, they all saluted the person. This included Marcus as well. Sichin waved his hand and said, Go back to your work. Everyone immediately dispersed. Some of them sneaked glances at Sichin as they left. They were very curious. Sichin walked forward and patted Mickey's shoulder. He said, It seems that you will have to work harder from now on. Mickey nodded. He thought that Sichin would definitely criticize him when he came over. After everyone left, Marcus was puzzled and asked, Why? If it were not for Zichen's rumors, he would have slapped the bearded man to death. Keeping such a person alive would be a disaster sooner or later. That guy is really interesting, Sichin said. Now, those people still lack an opportunity to deal with me. Maybe that guy just now can give me a surprise. Marcus knew that the 7 halls of spiritual magic had recently joined forces to deal with Sichin. He was puzzled and asked, Just him alone? Don't underestimate anyone. Sichin smiled faintly and said, If you trace back to the source of some big events, they are usually small things. Oh right, why are you here? Marcus asked again. Is the Hall of Spiritual Magic not busy? I was waiting for those people to make a move. I was a little bored, so I came over to take a look, Zichen said. Quickly arrange things here and then take people to other places to check out the situation. I recently bought a few abandoned mineral veins. Take some people to see if there are any more of these black stones. I have seen those stones many times. They are useless. Even Kant said that they are useless. Marcus said. Are you sure that it is useful to collect them? To collect these black stones, Zichen had to put in a lot of effort every day. It wasn't just those who received the money, but also other people's expenses. This was because he, as the leader, had not asked for a reward. Otherwise, the price Zichen had to pay would have been even greater. It's useful, but it can't be exchanged for other values, Zichen said. So, to me, this thing is actually a losing deal, Marcus said. Then why are you still offering such a high price? Zichen said. Although it's a loss-making deal, its value is undeniable. In short, I didn't lose out. First, he said that it was a losing deal, and now, he said that it was a win-win deal. This made Marcus confused. Fortunately, he didn't continue to ask. He only said that he still needed some time before he could leave. Zichen said, if you have someone you trust, you can ask them to watch over it for you. For me, the more the better. So, I hope your luck is better, and you can find this kind of black stone from other mineral veins. I don't want too much, just one mineral vein will be enough. Recently, Zichen hadn't been idle. He asked Kant to buy several mineral veins that had run out of soul crystals. He didn't send anyone to check and just bought them directly. After all, the price wasn't high. This was a gamble. If he was lucky, he might reap a big harvest. If he was unlucky, it didn't matter. Such a small loss was something that Zichen could still afford. The bearded man left with all of Michi's forces. His realm wasn't high, so he wanted to run back before dawn. It was already dark, and he hadn't reached the city yet. He cursed to suppress the fear in his heart. He returned to the city in fear. The bearded man was extremely unwilling to lose such a lucrative job and didn't get back the martial crystals. He wanted revenge. It was obviously impossible to challenge Zichen directly. He couldn't even withstand a slap from him. So, he thought of taking advantage of Zichen's enemy. Early the next morning, he went to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells and bought 2 black stones at a 10% discount. He also waited in line for a long time, which made him even more unhappy. Holding the 2 black stones, he went to another Hall of Spiritual Spells. After entering, he didn't look for the service staff. Instead, he asked to see the manager, saying that he had something important to discuss. As a result, he was kicked out as soon as he arrived at the first store. When he arrived at the second store, it was slightly better. He was kicked out, and the other party didn't do anything. He was very depressed and cursed in his heart that these people were all idiots. How could they not recognize such a good thing? If this continued, he would definitely be kicked out. He had tried this before. So, he wanted to change his method. After entering the third hall of spiritual spells, he coughed lightly and said directly, "Ask your master to come out. I have a resource here that even Zichen wants." As soon as he said this, the idle service staff looked at each other. Of course, they knew Zichen's name. Not only was he a shadow destroyer, but he was also their number one competitor. For the past few days, there had been no one in the store. It was all thanks to Zichen. "It's up to you to believe it or not," the bearded man said, pretending to be profound. Everyone was skeptical, but with the thought that it was better to believe it than not, they went to look for Michael. After Michael came down, he looked at the bearded man and said coldly, "If you can't give me any valuable information, you will die." The bearded man didn't expect Michael's temper to be so bad. His expression changed, but since things had come to this, he could only take out the black stone. Without waiting for the other staff to show a look of disdain, he hurriedly said, "Although this thing is only sold for 10 strands of power in Zichen's shop, we've already helped him earn tens of thousands of yuan in private." Michael took the black stone and looked at it. Naturally, he didn't see anything special about it. He looked at the service staff and noticed the strange expressions on their faces. Do you know each other? He's been here a few times and was chased away by us. I didn't expect him to think of such a method again, one of them said helplessly. Michael narrowed his eyes and looked at the bearded man. You dared to trick me? Do you want to die? The bearded man immediately said, Don't listen to their nonsense. They're all ignorant. Zichen collected 10 strands of strength in one go. Now that you've bought it back, you won't lose out at all. What nonsense is this? Michael was a little confused. Speak slowly. If you agree, I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you will die. So you only have one chance. Prepare your words well. The bearded man was overjoyed. As long as he had the chance to speak, it was fine. Normally, he wouldn't know what to say. But with Zichen's superfluous move, this matter was much easier to handle. He explained everything in detail, from the first 5 strands of strength to the last 10 strands of strength. Michael was interested. There was such a thing? Chapter 51-29. The more the bearded man spoke, the more excited he became. His spittle flew everywhere. He seemed to have found a way to make money. Michael played with the black stone in his hand and glanced at him. He didn't look like he was lying. Of course, he could slap a mere 3rd-level cultivator to death if he dared to lie in front of him. Therefore, the possibility of a conspiracy was very small. Then why did you come here? Why didn't you continue to mine? Michael asked. The bearded man said angrily. That Zichen is too despicable. He made a lot of money, but he only gave us a little reward. I was angry, so I quarreled with them and then came back. Sir, don't doubt me. To show my hatred for him, he gave me a piece of martial crystal, but I didn't take it. The bearded man said. It's because I know that I can't bear to take a gift from him. I don't like him. If I take his martial crystal stone and deal with him, my conscience won't be at ease. Michael naturally didn't believe him, but he didn't continue to ask. He could already hear the hatred for Zichen in the bearded man's words. That was enough. So he asked, What do you suggest? Sir, buy the black stones and hoard them all. Piss off Zichen. If you wait until you discover their great value and then buy them, it will be too late. Michael pondered for a moment. After a while, he waved his hand and said, You, go to Zichen and see what's going on. One of them nodded and then went to Zichen's hall of spiritual spells. People were still queuing here. The booming business was a sharp contrast to the other 7 halls of spiritual spells. Because he didn't buy anything, he walked in directly. Sure enough, he saw the black stones in a corner. However, the price was no longer 10 martial crystals, but 20 martial crystals. His expression changed slightly. Then he turned and left. When he went back, he told Michael the news. Impossible! When I came here, I only bought 2 pieces. It cost me 18 martial crystals. The bearded man shouted. You're stupid, but he's not. Michael glanced at the bearded man. The bearded man said dispiritedly, Then what should we do? He actually raised the price. That damned Zichen is really cunning. When the price was high, there was no point in collecting more. His appearance was even more meaningless. It's over. It's all over now. He turned around to leave. His plan to deal with Zichen had completely failed. In the future, if he wanted to target Zichen, it would be a fool's dream. Because the difference between the two was simply too great. Who's done? Michael suddenly spoke. Big Beard turned around and looked at Michael in confusion. Michael said, Since he wants 20 streams of power, why don't we just give him 20? My lord, this. The bearded man was increasingly puzzled. He still wanted the price even after it was raised? Was there something wrong with his brain? You said it yourself? Zichen is just trying to cover it up. Since that's the case, let's buy these things back. Michael said. It's a type of crystal that we don't know what use it has. Since we're willing to collect 10 strands of power, it naturally has its value. Perhaps we can really buy it first and then slowly study it, Michael said. Can you still get this thing? Big Beard shook his head and said, We can't. Zichin bought all the mineral veins. He's in charge there now. Since that's the case, then go now and buy more black stones back, Michael said. Buy all the black stones they have. My lord, I'm only in the 3rd level. How can I? Before Big Beard could finish speaking, Michael said directly, Dawood, take the resources and go with him. With that, he hurriedly walked out. Perhaps this time, he could use this incident to suppress Zichin in all aspects. Before that, he naturally had to discuss with the other 6 families. After all, there were many black stones. He couldn't take them all by himself. Big Beard brought Dawood and walked arrogantly into Zichen's Hall of Magic. They went straight for the black stones. Big Beard pointed at the black stones and said, I want all of these. I have a discount card here. There were about 200 pieces placed there. The black stones had been placed there for a long time, and no one had asked about them. He didn't expect someone to buy them today. There were 203 pieces in total. Big Beard bought all of them. Then he said, Do you have more of these black stones? I want more! And I want a lot of them. The other party was obviously not sure. He immediately went to inform Maria. When Maria heard the news and came here, she was a little surprised to see Big Beard. This was because Big Beard had come here a few times with Mickey to deliver the black stones. The price they offered back then was 5 forces. But today, he was actually here to buy them. Looking at the surprise in Maria's eyes, Big Beard knew that she recognized him. So he raised his head slightly and said, How many of these black stones do you have? I want all of them, Maria said. About 100. What? 100? Are you kidding? During this time, you've already hoarded 50,000. Big Beard panicked. 100? Are you trying to dismiss a beggar? I'm sorry. The black stones were placed here by my lord. He didn't mean to sell them, Maria explained apologetically. Big Beard and Dawood looked at each other. Obviously, they had guessed it. These were just a cover-up. Now that they had bought them, they wouldn't sell them. Where's your integrity? Where's your integrity? Seeing this, Big Beard immediately shouted. I came to buy them because I knew you had them here. It's fine that you raised the price, but now you're not being honest. As he shouted, many people looked over. Maria was a little anxious. Sir, we can talk again, Big Beard said. There's nothing to talk about. Give me another 1,000. Otherwise. At this moment, Dawood spoke. 10,000. He first looked at the bearded man with some disdain. He really was a guy who had not seen the world. He thought that $1,000 was a big number. He looked at Maria. We want 10,000. This? Wait a moment. I'll go and ask my lord, Maria said. Big Beard waved his hand and said, Hurry up and ask. Let me tell you, if there's nothing, don't blame us for making a scene here. Maria went upstairs and saw Zichin. My lord, you guessed right. They really came. I said that it was only 100, but they asked for 10,000. And they didn't even bargain. Zichin sat there. After hearing this number, he didn't look too surprised. He said, Go and tell them that it will be very difficult to get 10,000 at once. The manpower and material resources will be very high, and we can only provide 100 per day. Zichin suddenly smiled and said, Of course, if they are in a hurry, we can also provide 10,000, but there will be another price. Zichin stretched out 5 fingers. 50 strands of strength, 1 piece. And there's no discount. 50 strands of strength, my lord, isn't this too high? What if they are scared away? Maria was very worried because she knew very well that this thing was bought with 5 strands of strength. It wouldn't be a loss even if it was sold for 10 strands. And this was their first customer. Was it really good to raise the price like this? Zichin said. I'm afraid that they will be scared away, so I didn't ask for 100 strands of strength. Don't worry, they will definitely agree to the price of 50 strands of strength. Maria went downstairs with doubts. Chapter 51:30. Zichen had been cultivating recently. However, without higher-level resources, his progress was extremely slow. Under normal circumstances, he would need decades, centuries, or even longer before he could break through again. Therefore, he had to find something to do during this long period of time. For example, it was quite interesting to fight with these people now. Michael contacted the other 6 Hall of Spiritual Spell Masters and told them about his latest idea. "If it's really useful, we can give it a try." After everyone heard this, someone immediately said. The others naturally had no objections. After all, it wouldn't cost much energy. Just then, someone came and whispered in Michael's ear. Hearing this, Michael couldn't help but smile. Everyone looked at him. Michael said, "I just received news that Zichen can only provide 100 blackstones a day." "If you want more, how?" one of them asked. "We have to increase the price." Michael smiled. "If you want 10,000 blackstones, you have to pay 50 energy per piece. And it's the kind that doesn't give a discount. 50 blackstones? Isn't this price 30 energy points higher than the original price?" One of them was shocked. "Is Zichen crazy?" Michael said. "To be precise, it's 41 energy points higher than the original price. Because it's 10 energy points in the morning, and there's a discount." For a moment, everyone's expressions changed. Michael said, "Everyone, what do you see?" Everyone was smart. Of course, they knew that this was Zichen's plan because he wasn't willing to sell. However, 50 energy points per piece wasn't cheap. Would they be able to make a profit in the future? First, Zichen secretly bought the mineral vein, and then he paid the mining fee of 10 Dao force. "Everyone, if it were you, do you think the purchase price of 50 Dao force is worth it?" Michael asked and answered himself. "If we don't look at the effect, of course it would be worth it. The problem now is that we don't know the true value of the blackstones. Indeed, if they knew the true value of the blackstones, they would naturally have a detailed strategy. But now, they didn't know the value of the blackstones. With Zichen's cunning, I don't believe he would do a bad deal," Michael said. "So, my suggestion is not only to buy it, but also to buy all the blackstone back. We signed an agreement with Zichen before, so he can't sell his blackstones to others. Only we can collect enough. In this way, we, who have monopolized the blackstone, will naturally have the absolute right to set the price once we discover its value in the future." Michael pointed in a direction and said, "If we didn't control one less hall of spiritual magic, we wouldn't be in such an awkward situation. Therefore, in order to prevent something like this from happening again, we must ensure that all the blackstones are in our hands." Everyone looked at each other, hesitation in their eyes. But after a while, he nodded. After that, everything was left to Big Beard to handle. Yesterday, Big Beard had been chased away like a stray dog. However, today, his status had changed. He had become rich and overbearing. After receiving instructions, he and Du returned to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells. Seeing Milia again, the bearded man said directly, "We want $10,000 every day, every day." Milia said, "Well, I'm sorry. We can't guarantee that there will be so many blackstones every day." Big Beard said, 50 streams of power for 1 blackstone, and no discounts. We agreed to this price." Milia said again, "I'm sorry. We may be able to provide enough in the early stages, but it will be difficult in the later stages. After all, these blackstones need to be mined. We can't produce 10,000 blackstones a day." Big Beard was deeply aware of this point. Unless Marcus sent more people over, it would be really difficult to get 10,000 blackstones a day. Based on his speed, he could only mine about 10 blackstones a day. A few hundred people added up to only a few thousand. "Even if it's not 10,000, we still want it." Big Beard had told Michael this point when he came, so he wasn't in a difficult position now. He said directly, "That's fine too. But you have to guarantee that all the blackstones you mine will be sold to us." Milia nodded and said, Of course, we can guarantee this. Big Beard sneered and said, I don't believe you. We need to sign a contract. Milia looked a little troubled and said, I see. That's fine too. But you have to guarantee that you will collect as many blackstones as you dig out. What a joke. Do we lack your power? Big Beard sneered. He was very rich and overbearing. After both sides signed the contract, Milia took it upstairs and was about to hand it to Zichen. Zichen said, Keep the contract well. You will handle the blackstone transactions from now on. Milia nodded. But as if she thought of something, she said, Sir, are those blackstones really good things? Take a guess? Zichen smiled and didn't give a direct answer. The blackstones that he brought back last time should be able to last for a while, so Zichen planned to make use of this time to do business with everyone. The next day, 10,000 blackstones were shipped over and handed to Big Beard. And it was also the first time that Big Beard used a storage ring. On this day, Milia obtained 500,000 streams of power and then handed it to Marcus. She asked him to take this power and go to the mines. After all, there was no credit. Everyone had to use blackstones to exchange for power every day. It was the same on the second day. But on the third day, the number of blackstones decreased to 9,000, which caused Big Beard to complain. He sternly told them that they had to gather enough by tomorrow. After all, it had only been 3 days, and they were already cheating. On the fourth day, they gathered another 10,000 blackstones. Because they didn't know anything, they collected a lot of blackstones every day. She followed Zichen's instructions and gave this power to Marcus in the early stages. And Marcus took this power and found another group of people. The number of people increased, and so did the production. Kant was also arranged to go out. Marcus didn't have time. He helped to check the mines and look for other blackstones. After knowing that Zichen started to sell blackstones, he was very surprised. Although he didn't know the true value of blackstones, he knew that Zichen valued these blackstones very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have paid such a high price to buy that mine. So he asked Zichen. Zichen didn't hide anything and told Kant his idea. This made Kant stunned. Could it be like this? If he really succeeded, then the 6 hall masters of the spiritual spell palace would probably eat him, right? Chapter 51-31. Kant went to look for other mineral veins while Marcus found more people to enter the original mineral vein. Outside of the mineral vein, the other facilities had to be completed. Hence, he was very busy and had no time to be distracted. Recently, he heard that the blackstone was sold at the price of 50 strands of energy. This price was naturally a profit, but he still didn't understand. How much was it worth? Moreover, Zichen still asked him to find people. It seemed that he wanted to finish mining this mineral vein in a few days. The energy he obtained from Maria was enough to cover the cost of mining. The recent output was already 10,000 pieces a day, but Zichen still wanted to increase the speed. Big Beard became a regular at the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He came here every day with his head held high. Because he was rich. What? Only 9,300 pieces today? What are you doing? Big Beard's shout attracted the attention of many people. Everyone looked over. He looked at Maria and reprimanded. We are buying at such a high price, and you are not mining diligently? I say, can't you increase the output? Sorry, we are already increasing the speed. It's just that it's getting harder and harder to mine recently. Maria explained. I don't care. We have already signed the contract. Big Beard said indifferently. Now give me the rest of the blackstone. Big Beard took the blackstone and left. Maria kept the energy according to the plan. The energy was no longer given to Marcus, but to her. The current amount was already very considerable. Michael and the others still hadn't found the real use of the blackstone. However, they couldn't just keep buying it. Hence, they wanted to go deeper and ask for help. They wanted to see if the people inside knew. They brought some of the blackstone inside. As the Hall of Spiritual Spells had no business recently, they needed to give the people inside an explanation. The people inside obviously didn't care about the small matters outside, especially the profits of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. However, after hearing that Zichen was mining these blackstone, they were very interested. They also became interested in the dispute between the people. Hence, they left a portion of the blackstone and started to study it to see the true value. Michael and the others waited patiently outside. While waiting, they were still buying blackstone in large quantities. A few days later, news came from inside. At present, they did not know the value of this black stone. But he guessed Zichen's identity. Perhaps this black stone had something to do with the Shadow Destroyer. However, the people inside didn't say anything about the details. They only told him that they were still looking for people to investigate the matter, and that they would send news out as soon as there was news. When Michael and the others heard this, their expressions changed. Because the person inside had said very clearly that this thing was either worthless or related to the Shadow Destroyer. Michael looked at them. "Do you believe that this thing is a waste product?" Everyone was silent. Of course, they didn't want to believe it. Michael said, "Whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it." They all looked at Michael. "Zichen isn't a fool. He wouldn't buy something useless at a high price," he said confidently. "I firmly believe that this thing must be related to the Shadow Destroyer. Therefore, this step of ours is actually the right one." Michael played with the black stone in his hand and said, "To us, it might really be useless, but to Zichen, it's definitely of great use. Therefore, as long as we keep buying, Zichen will eventually not be able to take it anymore and come to us to buy it. When that time comes, the price will naturally be set by us." In an attempt to convince everyone, he found Big Beard. It was Big Beard's first time seeing so many Six Realms. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Michael said, "Tell me, how big is that mine? How much blackstone is there in it?" Big Beard thought for a while and said, "I heard before that the blackstone inside can be mined for 100 or 200 years. But during this time, they've been sending more people and increasing production. The time will probably be greatly reduced." Michael asked again, "Do you know if Zichen has discovered other similar mines?" "No, there's only one now. Once it's mined, there won't be any left," Big Beard said. "Oh, right. This morning, they didn't collect enough blackstone. I reprimanded them for not keeping their word." Michael nodded and then looked at the others. One of them said, "But if we continue to collect, we'll accumulate more and more blackstone. Naturally, we'll have to pay more and more power. It's not a problem for the 7 of us to buy the blackstone in a mine together," Michael said. "Just treat it as an investment. If Zichen gives us less than 200 streams of power, we won't sell. This way, the 7 shops' losses will be recouped." Just then, a person walked in and whispered something in Michael's ear. Michael's expression changed immediately. "What happened?" The others all looked at Michael. Michael said, "Just now, Zichen's Hall of Magic sent a message over. He said that the production has increased. From tomorrow onwards, we can guarantee about 15,000 blackstone a day. The further we go, the more we'll be able to guarantee 20,000 blackstone a day." "What?" Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard that. The production had increased, and it was even actively increasing. Was the blackstone really valuable? They began to doubt themselves. "It can't be. Why did it suddenly increase?" Big Beard muttered in his heart at this moment. Michael said, "Are you sure that the amount this morning wasn't enough?" Big Beard nodded. "Not only is it not enough today, it won't be enough for many days." Michael asked again, "Then did he say that the production will increase tomorrow, or that there will definitely be enough tomorrow?" "No, he just said that it's very difficult to mine now, so the production is limited." This made the others very confused. The production in the morning was not enough, so why was it enough now and increased by so much? Could it be that another mine was discovered today? But it shouldn't be so fast. Michael suddenly smiled coldly and said, "Everyone, what if it's like this?" They deliberately used the excuse that the production was not enough, but in fact, they were secretly hoarding some blackstone. So now, they want to use all of this blackstone to give us the illusion that there are too many blackstone. Big Beard was confused. But what's the point of giving us this illusion? We're going to take it anyway. Have we signed the contract? Michael smiled coldly. Of course, it's to make us back off. I estimate that not only will there be 15,000 blackstone tomorrow, but in less than 3 days, the amount will increase to 20,000 blackstone. He will deliberately put a lot of pressure on us to make us back off. The others nodded. Michael's deduction was very likely to be correct. Immediately, Michael said, "Since Zichen has made his move, then we'll take it. From tomorrow onwards, take more power. We'll take as much as they have. Remember, all of it. Whether it's 20,000 or 30,000, we'll take it all." Big Beard accepted the order and left. The next day, the amount increased to 15,000 blackstones. Big Beard bought all of them. On the third day, 18,000 blackstones were all bought. On the fourth day, a total of 20,000 blackstones were bought. When Zichen learned of this, he suddenly laughed. Not bad. Looks like they've taken the bait. Then let's continue. Time passed. In the next few days, more than 20,000 blackstones were provided every day. And the amount was still slowly increasing. A month passed just like that. Zichen really made a lot of money by selling blackstones. It was almost time. If he delayed any longer, it would be disadvantageous to him. So Zichen made his move again. Kant appeared. He went to find Hobson for a drink. Hobson saw that he was in a good mood and asked him what he had been busy with recently. Kant, who was already a little drunk, said mysteriously, "Old Hua, I've been rich recently. Zichen's side gave me a huge reward. Thanks to you, I'm here to treat you to a drink." "What is it?" Hobson asked curiously. Chapter 5132. Hearing Kant's words, Hobson's eyes suddenly widened in shock. Seeing the change in Hobson's expression, Kant knew that he had misspoken. He immediately smiled and said, "I'm just joking." "What's with your expression?" Hobson said. "That's quite a joke you're making. Everyone's saying that you got something good and sold it for a high price." Kant looked at Hobson carefully and found that his expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "That's right. Lord Zichen found it. Of course it's something good." Hobson also nodded and asked, "Why are you looking for me today?" Kant said, "I've been free recently. Lord Zichen gave me some salary, so I wanted to find someone to drink with. You know that my friends haven't been very friendly to me recently." Hobson had heard about this and knew the reason. Naturally, it was because of Zichen. He said, "Maybe there's some misunderstanding between you two. It'll be fine if you resolve it." Kant sighed and said, "It's really a misunderstanding. They don't know Zichen well. Not to mention Lord Zichen's fighting ability. Just in terms of business, Lord Zichen's brain is almost invincible. Hey, you know those lousy." "Haha." Kant, who was a little carried away, coughed lightly and sighed. "You don't know, but Lord Zichen has been very worried recently. He found the black stone by accident, and it's extremely valuable. He wanted to lower the price, so he put it in the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He didn't expect that someone else would also find its value and want to buy it. He had no choice but to raise the price, hoping that the other party would back off. He didn't expect that even if the price was doubled, that person would still want it. So now it's a little troublesome." Kant continued, "You don't know how worried Lord Zichen has been recently. He doesn't even want to eat or drink. Even now, he's still trying to think of a way to make them back off and give up." Hobson listened quietly and didn't interrupt. However, he was examining how much of Kant's words were true and how much was false. "Sir Zichen asked me to think of a solution, but how could I? That's why I'm also very worried and want to find someone to drink with." Kant patted Hobson's shoulder. "That's why I'm here." Kant raised his wine cup and said, "Come, cheers." After the two of them finished drinking, Kant left. Hobson went back to his house, thinking about Kant's words all the way. Not long after, Michael arrived. Compared to Kang De, Michael, the hallmaster, had known Hobson for a longer time. The two of them might not be friends, but they were definitely familiar with each other. "Did you find out anything?" Michael asked when he came in. Hobson repeated what Khan had said at the table. The gist of it was pretty much the same, and he didn't add anything to it. "I knew that the value of that black stone would be extraordinary," Michael said excitedly. "We're rich this time." In fact, he had looked for Hobson a few times, hoping that he could help him find out some information about the black stone through Kant. After all, they had bought a lot of black stones over the years, and the amount of money they had to pay was astronomical. Even if the 7 halls of spiritual magic worked together, they still couldn't afford it. Looking at the excited Michael, Hobson's eyes were filled with pity. He wasn't sure at first, but now he was sure that they had been fooled by Zichen. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Michael noticed that Hobson's expression had changed. Hobson didn't say anything, and he didn't respond. Michael knew what was going on. He immediately took out some resources and handed them to Hobson. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Hobson frowned slightly, but he still didn't say anything. Michael's expression changed, and his excitement disappeared. He took out a second set of resources. Hobson still didn't say anything. Michael had a bad feeling. This time, he gritted his teeth and took out 3 more sets of resources. 5 sets of resources were placed in front of him. This wasn't a small price to pay. He hoped that Hobson could give him more valuable information. "What he told you just now was what he told me after he woke up. Today, I was drinking with Kant. When we were drinking to our heart's content, he told me that he had become rich recently, and that Zichen had given him a lot of rewards." Hobson put away the 5 sets of resources. "Rich?" Michael's heart skipped a beat. "I asked him why, and he blurted out that someone had bought the black stones at a high price," Hobson said. "Everyone knows about this. That's not strange, right?" Michael was a little unhappy. Just because everyone knew about this, Hobson wanted 5 sets of resources from him. Hobson sneered and said, "What if you added the word idiot to that sentence? The black stones had been bought by an idiot at a high price." "What?" Michael's expression changed drastically, and he stood up immediately. This was an obvious mockery. Why was he mocking him? Of course, it was because the black stones were worthless. "Is your information reliable?" Michael's face turned very pale. If this was true, they would lose a lot. Hobson shook his head and said, "I don't know either. You can judge for yourself." When I heard that, although my expression wasn't as exaggerated as yours, it still changed. He sensed it, and immediately said that it was just a joke. At that time, I also said that the joke wasn't funny. After that, we changed the topic, but somehow, we ended up talking about Zichen. He praised Zichen very much, saying that Zichen was very smart, and that no one could compare to him in terms of intelligence. Then, he seemed to want to give me an example, but he only said one word before changing the topic again. I realized that after the 2 missteps, he had completely sobered up. This time, he said that he came to me because he was annoyed. He said that the black stones were very valuable, but someone else had found out about it. They had been worried about it, but they couldn't find a way to make the other party back out. Michael's body swayed, and he sat down directly. This time, he understood that what he had said when he was sober was intentional. It was because he had accidentally let it slip. It was like a bolt from the blue. Michael wanted to die. At that moment, he truly understood the value of this information. Not to mention 5 sets of resources, even 50 sets would be enough. He first saluted Hobson and then quickly left. Next, they had to discuss. The 7 of them sat together. After hearing Michael's words, they all looked as if they had been struck by lightning. They had been fooled? At that moment, everyone was burning with anger. Some even wanted to call the bearded man over and chop his head off. It was all because of this guy. Could this be Zichen's plan? One of them suddenly said. His goal is to make us retreat in the face of difficulties. The others looked at the person who spoke as if they were looking at an idiot. It was obvious that this was a trap that Zichen had set for them. This was what they had hoped for in the end. Looking at everyone's disdainful looks, the man said, "There hasn't been any news from inside, so they haven't said that this thing is trash. Trash naturally wouldn't send news. There will only be news if it's something good." Michael gritted his teeth and said, "Looks like we've been fooled." At that moment, everyone wanted to kill someone. At that moment, the bearded man and Durwood returned. Both of them walked with their heads held high. Because Zichen was playing tricks on them again. The two of them came to look for Michael and were shocked when they saw everyone else. The bearded man sorted out his thoughts and said, "Sir, this morning, that little girl told us that the production has increased again. There are 40,000 pieces a day. She asked if we could buy all of them." The few of them looked at each other. At this point, the bearded man smiled and said, "We knew that this was a trap to force us to back out. Of course, we wouldn't fall for it. We immediately said that we would buy as much as we could and that we didn't owe them anything." Before the bearded man could claim credit, Michael kicked him. If it was before, he would have thought that this was a trap set by Zichen. However, with this piece of news, this was a completely different situation from how he looked at it. The increase in production time and time again was obviously because they were afraid that they would find out and not buy any more. And they still foolishly thought that this was a trap set by the other party to force them to back out. If they really backed out, would Zichen keep those worthless stones for himself to eat? "Sir, why are you doing this?" The bearded man was stunned by the kick. "How dare you trick me? I want you dead." Chapter 51-33. Michael stomped on the bearded man until he cried out, but he did not know what he had done wrong. Durwood stood at the side, feeling a little scared. Because he did not know what the bearded man had done wrong. Was he too arrogant? Did the Lord not like it? And Durwood realized that not only did the others not stop him, they even had the thought of stepping forward. This did not seem normal. He was tired of kicking. Only then did Michael sit back down and say, "Everyone, what do you think?" Now, it was almost certain that he had bought a bunch of junk. "Think of a way to get rid of it," one of them said. One of them said, feeling extremely sullen, and also extremely helpless. "Get rid of it? How do we get rid of it? Who wants it?" Another person said. "And in such a large quantity?" The bearded man got up and asked, "Lord, what do you mean get rid of it? What are you talking about?" After being beaten up, he was still confused. Looking at the bearded man, everyone was furious. They were all smart people, but they were fooled by this guy. Michael said angrily, "That black stone is junk!" The bearded man shouted, "Impossible! How can something Zichen bought at a high price be junk? He just wants to give people a false impression. He's been fooling you. Can't you see it?" Michael was furious. "It's junk! It's junk!" The bearded man was dumbfounded. Was it really junk? Could it be that all this was a trap? He could not believe it. Go now and get rid of all these black stones," Michael said coldly. "If you can't get rid of them, I'll get rid of you," the bearded man said. "How? Throw them all away?" Thinking about it, he felt a little aggrieved. He bought them at a high price and was about to throw them away. "Change them to power! Change them all to power!" Michael almost roared. "If you want to throw them away, don't we know how to do it?" The bearded man looked troubled. "But Lord, since this thing is useless, who would want it?" "I don't care. No matter what, you have to change them to power. Otherwise, just wait for death." Facing Michael's threat, the bearded man felt wrong. This was unreasonable. However, looking at their expressions of wanting to eat him alive, it was obvious that they were being reasonable. After all, the losses were too great. Looking at everyone's murderous eyes, the bearded man, who didn't want to die, said, "With such a large amount, I can only sell it to Zichen." Michael wanted to kick him to death. "Are you an idiot? Do you think he would want it when he knows it's trash? Don't you know how to find someone else to lie to? Big Beard said helplessly. My lord, other than Zichen, who else in the city can eat so many black stones? Do you think Zichen is stupid? Would he want the junk that he sold himself? Michael was furious. If not for his rationality reminding him, he would have killed someone. He was already buying these black stones, so why don't we just sell them to him? It's just that we don't have the original price. In the end, Big Beard actually lost his confidence. Zichen wasn't stupid. He definitely wouldn't accept it. At this moment, one of them said, Maybe it's possible. The others all looked at the person who spoke. The other party continued, Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells is a shop that does business. Now that he has blackstones in his shop, what reason does he have to not accept our blackstones? There was a murderous look in the other party's eyes. Unless he already knew it was fake and deliberately lied to us. That's why he wouldn't accept it. If that's the case, we have a reason to destroy his shop. Who asked him to sell fake goods? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. This method was indeed feasible. They had been in despair before, but now there was a glimmer of hope. At this moment, Big Beard thought of something. But what if Zichen is only willing to accept 5 strands of power? Or 10 strands of power? One had to know that the price of this item was a full 50 strands of power. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression turned ugly again. But now that things had come to this, they couldn't treat these trash as treasures, right? Even though he had lost 40 strands of energy, it was still better than nothing. Michael said, There's no time to lose. Bring all the blackstones over, and bring more people. No matter what, we have to sell these trash back to Zichen. If they don't accept it, don't blame us for taking action. Big Beard said, Sir, why don't we go together? This business was too big. He obviously didn't dare to make a decision. After all, they had already lost their money. If they didn't handle it well, they might lose their lives. If we go, won't Zichen recognize it? Sir, you can disguise it a little. This method was naturally feasible. After looking at each other, they decided to follow the crowd. After all, this way, they could deal with some unexpected situations. So, Durwood immediately found a few dozen people to bring all the blackstones. Michael and the other 6 blended into the crowd and didn't seem that conspicuous. When they arrived outside Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells and saw so many people in line, their expressions turned even worse. Get out, all of you get out! Big Beard and the others went forward and chased the people in the line to the side. They swaggered in. Where's Milia? Ask that girl to come out. The leader was still Big Beard. Only he could do this kind of thing. Milia quickly arrived. When she saw Big Beard, she immediately said, Sorry, those blackstones can only come tomorrow. If you really can't wait, I can urge them again. Hearing this, if they still didn't understand, they would be fools. Those blackstones were indeed useless. They all wanted to tear this girl apart. Take a look at this. Do you want it? Big Beard took out a blackstone and handed it to Milia. When Milia saw the blackstone, her expression suddenly changed. She looked at Big Beard and then at the people behind him. What are you looking at? Do you want it or not? Big Beard asked. Milia was stunned. She didn't know how to answer. Someone from the side wanted to come over, but the others immediately blocked him and surrounded Maria. Say, do you want it or not? Big Beard was aggressive. Milia had never seen such a scene before. She was almost scared to tears. She stuttered and said, I don't know. Why don't you wait? Tomorrow, Lord Zichen will come back. I will help you ask. Michael's eyes flashed. He didn't care if his identity would be exposed. He asked directly, Zichen is not here? Lord is not here. He went to the mine, to supervise. Michael was furious when he heard that. It was obvious that Zichen had gone to urge them to speed up the progress. Fortunately, they came. Otherwise, it would be another 40,000 pieces of broken blackstones tomorrow. However, since Zichen was not here, and looking at this stupid girl, things seemed to be easy to handle. He walked forward, held the blackstone, and said, "You're the one who sold this. A total of 50 streams of power. Have you forgotten? Tell me now, do you want it or not? If you do, everything is negotiable. If you don't, then don't blame us for tearing down your shop and making it impossible for you to continue operating," Michael said coldly. "Because you're selling something that you don't want. This is against the rules." Milia was almost scared to tears. She was at a loss. "Say, do you want it or not?" Michael stared at Milia coldly. He was still aggressive. "Yes, yes, we'll take it." Milia quickly nodded. Michael asked again. "How?" Milia said again. 5 streams of power, we'll take it." Big Beard was furious when he heard that. "Do you think we're stupid? The price you're charging at the mine is 10 streams of power. How dare you scheme against us now? Do you want to die? No, we'll also take 10 streams of power." Chapter 5134. Maria sounded like she was about to cry. She had never seen such a scene before. Everyone's eyes were wide open, and they looked like they were about to eat someone. Her companions were blocked outside and couldn't come over at all. Now, she only hoped that they wouldn't agree. Of course, it would be best if they could delay until the Lord came back. She looked at them with a pleading look in her eyes. She prayed that they wouldn't agree to buy her some time. Looking at Maria's terrified and pleading eyes, Michael knew what was going on. This time, the heavens were still on their side. Or rather, even the heavens couldn't stand Zechen scheming against them. If Zechen was here today, he probably wouldn't want a single strand of power. Even if he did, the price would probably be reduced to the lowest, such as $100 per strand of power. Now, Zechen wasn't here and had gone to the mine. They could naturally guess that Zechen must be urging them to speed up the mining. After all, trash could become treasures in his hands. But today, they had come back to kill him. Zechen would never have thought that they would come to their senses today. In this way, Michael was even more glad that he had given them the 5 portions of resources and indirectly helped them save a lot of losses. "Okay, 10 strands of power it is. Let's settle it now. We'll give you the things. We want power!" Michael nodded in agreement. Maria almost fainted when she heard that. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. "Don't think about fainting. With so many of us here, it'll be hard for you to faint. And don't try to stall for time. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll even help you," Michael warned coldly and then looked at Big Beard. Big Beard understood and immediately took out a bunch of rings. Inside were the black stones that they had collected during this period. They didn't know what they were used for, so they didn't touch them. "You should have records of these. We haven't touched them since we bought them. Hurry up and give us the power." Big Beard directly stuffed these rings into the hands of the helpless Maria. Then he said almost shamelessly, "Okay, you've taken the things. Now it's time to give us the power. Otherwise, we'll tear down your shop." The others were also aggressive. Around them, there were people who wanted to come over to check out the situation, but they were unable to do so. Kant wasn't in the shop either. The others didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't come over. Maria was alone, and she was weak. Helpless, she began to count the rings and check the black stones inside. "I say, you did it on purpose, didn't you? How long are we going to count like this? First, bring out an equal amount of power." The bearded man pointed to a ring and said, "There are 25,000 black stones in here. They were collected this morning. Now give me the same amount of power." Speaking of which, when he bought it in the morning, it was 5 times the original price. Now that he had changed hands, he had lost so much. But now, that was the only way. Fortunately, Zechen was not here. Otherwise, the power given to him would be even less. After all, Zechen was not as easy to bully as this girl. Faced with everyone's pressure, Maria could only bring out batch after batch of power. The power that she had exchanged back then, except for the early ones that were given to Marcus for him to use. The rest were with her. Zechen did not ask for them back. Therefore, the current Maria had enough to pay. Michael was a little puzzled. How could a little girl have so much power on her? But the bearded man explained that everything before was handled by her, and all the power was given to her. When Michael and the others heard this, they felt even more fortunate. The heavens were really opening their eyes. Luck was on their side this time. No one knew if she was scared silly, but in the end, Maria no longer counted. She would give as much as others said. But the total amount added up was not much different from what was sold back then. Maria knew this in her heart. After all, almost all the previous sales had gone through her hands. Finally, all the rings were accounted for. Everyone got all the power that they deserved. In fact, they even asked for more than 100 strands of power. Because they took hundreds of black stones to the depths and let the people inside check them. Then, the black stones were left inside. Of course, they would not explicitly tell them this. I'll leave the rings with you first. When you're done counting, you can give them to us. Or we'll come back tomorrow to get them. After saying that, everyone left smugly. Seeing everyone swagger away, Maria also heaved a sigh of relief. Lord Zichen was really not around, but before he left, he said that if something unexpected happened, she could handle it herself. One of the points was that if they went back on their word and questioned her with the black stones, she could take back those black stones again, but it definitely could not exceed 10 strands of power. So half of the fear from before was real. After all, so many people surrounded her, and all of them looked fierce. And the other half was a very realistic act. It seemed that women had a natural advantage in acting. In this way, all the black stones were returned, and each one was equivalent to earning an additional 40 strands of power. Maria wondered if they would be pissed to death if they came to buy them back one day. On the way back, Michael and the others also heaved a sigh of relief. This kind of junk was finally sold. They all felt that it was unreal. Losing money was naturally heart-wrenching, but now that they had lost a little, they felt more at ease. Damn Zichen, we definitely won't let you go. Michael gritted his teeth. This time, they had been completely played by Zichen. If they had not reacted quickly today and turned the tables, their losses would have been even greater. When he thought about how they would have 40,000 black stones tomorrow at a high price, he could only rejoice in his heart. Then they looked at the bearded man, considering whether or not to let him live. After all, their losses this time were too great. Even if they killed him 100 times, it would not be enough to vent their hatred. Don't worry, Lord. I'll get the rings back tomorrow morning, and I'll humiliate them again. The bearded man seemed to sense that something was wrong and hurriedly said this. Michael waved his hand, too lazy to pay attention to him. A mere third-strength realm cultivator. He could kill him whenever he wanted. For now, he would keep him alive. Early the next morning, the bearded man came to ask for the rings. During this time, he did not forget to point at Maria and deliberately humiliate her. Maria did not refute and returned all the rings. She had already emptied out those black stones. Also on the same day, Michael and the others received news from the depths. The use of the black stones had been found. They indeed contained a special kind of power. Chapter 5135. The black stone contains the power of shadow destruction. It's useful to us. Bring it all over. This news came from the depths of the forest early in the morning. Michael and the others were all dumbfounded when they heard the news. They felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their heads were buzzing and could explode at any time. Was the black stone really a good thing? Everyone had the urge to die. They were still feeling smug early in the morning. Although the loss was not small, they had tricked Zichen. The black stone did not fall into their hands in the end. Moreover, they did not continue to be tricked. They had come to their senses in time. They would let Zichen slowly dig. But now, the news came that the black stone was really a good thing. Why didn't you say so earlier? Michael roared in anger. His eyes were full of indignation. Why did it turn out like this? Wouldn't it have been solved if he had come a day earlier? Now, the few of them completely understood and came to their senses. They had been tricked by Zichen. Hobson's news was intentional. Or rather, Khan had purposely exposed a flaw in order to bait them into spitting out the black stone. Zichen's ultimate goal was to take away all the black stones. Because this thing was truly a good thing. The remorse in their hearts was indescribable. If they had known this would happen, they would have persevered for a day, even if it was just a day. It was at this point that Big Beard and Durwood returned. Looking at the lords, Big Beard said, "My lords, I got the ring back. I even tore up the contract and humiliated the little girl. My lords, you didn't see her expression. It was truly marvelous." Michael narrowed his eyes. This time, he really wanted to kill. The others were the same. Big Beard was stunned. What was going on? He just wanted to ask for a ring. Why was everyone looking at him like that? "Although it's useless, let's keep it first in case it's useful." One of them stood up. This sentence pulled Big Beard back from the gates of hell. Big Beard was very grateful, but he was still confused. Why did they want to kill him? "Let's go." Michael and the others also stood up and walked outside. "Lord, where are you going?" Durwood asked from behind. "Go and buy more black stones." Michael sighed. It was just one day, just one day. Not only would he be able to cover all his losses, he would also be able to make a fortune. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold on for even a day. The bearded man reacted quickly and exclaimed, "That black stone is good stuff. I told you it was good stuff, real good stuff." His shout immediately attracted many cold gazes. He was so scared that he quickly shut his mouth. Now, everything was clear. These idiots had been tricked by Zichen, thinking that the blackstone was trash. Now, after buying it back at a high price, it was cheated by Zichen at a low price. But now that he knew the value of the blackstone, could he still buy it back? Even if he bought it back, it would cost him 90 strands of energy. The bearded man also followed. The group of people walked towards the Hall of Magic where Zichen was. When they arrived at the entrance, they saw the people lining up. Then they thought about the shops that had been abandoned by their side for a long time. They became even angrier and directly drove the people in the line away. Then, he went straight to where Blackstone was. But when they saw the price next to the Blackstone, they almost fainted. 1,000 strands of energy for one piece. This price was 20 times higher than yesterday's price. Milia had just changed the price and was about to leave when she saw a group of people walk in. "Give us back our Blackstone!" Michael stared at Milia and said coldly, "You want to buy Blackstone?" Milia looked at them and said, 1,000 strands of energy for one piece. This price was set by Zichen. Milia didn't understand. No one wanted to buy 50 strands of energy. Why would anyone want to buy it at this price? But she could only do as she was told. "We're not buying! We're taking back the Blackstone that belongs to us. Give me back the Blackstone that I gave you yesterday. I'll return the energy to you." Michael took out the energy from yesterday. Just thinking about it made him sullen. "Sorry, the Blackstone now is 1,000 strands of energy for one piece. If you want, you can buy it at this price." Milia smiled apologetically at them and said, "If you want a lot, I can help you find Lord Zichen and see if he can give you a discount. Everything else is fine, but there's no discount for this Blackstone." Just then, a voice rang out. It was Zichen. The subordinates surrounding them didn't dare to block Zichen's way. They all moved aside. Zichen walked closer and looked at Michael and the others. He smiled and said, "I heard that you returned the Blackstone yesterday, and very forcefully threatened my subordinates to return it. You even came early this morning and tore up the contract we signed. You even deliberately humiliated me? You're so untrustworthy. How can I give you a discount?" Zichen looked them up and down and said, "If you want 1,000 strands of energy for one piece, I have as much as you want." In fact, he was very glad that he wasn't too greedy and didn't wait a little longer. Otherwise, he would be the one to become a joke. Looking at their expressions, it was clear that the people inside had already figured out the use of the Blackstone. This time, he couldn't hide it anymore. The Blackstone was a treasure. "Are you sure you won't return my Blackstone?" Michael stared at Zichen, a cold glint in his eyes. Zichen smiled. "What do you mean return it? If you want it, you can buy it. 1,000 strands of energy. Oh, I almost forgot. Your shops aren't doing well. I guess you don't have any more resources now, right?" "Zichen, don't go too far," Michael said coldly. "Return the Blackstone to us, and we'll write off our grudge. Otherwise, don't even think about having an easy time in the future." He held up the ring full of energy. "This is the price you gave me yesterday. I'll buy it back at this price," Zichen mockingly said. "Your plan is quite good. Unfortunately, your threat is nothing more than a joke in my eyes." "A joke?" Michael said. "You have to understand that we're working for the people inside. Right now, they're asking for the Blackstone. Once we tell them the truth, what do you think the people inside will think?" Zichen laughed. "They'll think you're a bunch of trash." Zichen didn't care about their threats at all. He waved his hand and said, "Do you want to buy something? If not, then leave. Don't delay my business. You asked for it and ruined your own business. Don't drag me down with you. Right, if your Hall of Magic is willing to sell, remember to tell me. I'll be happy to take it for you. Looks like you're forcing us." A cold light flashed in Michael's eyes. "Do you really think I can't do anything to you?" He stepped down, and the big bearded man's leg was broken. The man howled. Michael said, "You can go lie down outside. Just say that you bought his stuff and aggravated your injury." The big bearded man immediately wailed and walked to the door to lie down. "Come and see. He's selling fake goods." Chapter 5136. "Everyone, come quickly! He's selling fake goods! Liar! This is an unscrupulous merchant!" Big Beard was rolling on the ground, wailing miserably, which attracted a lot of attention. Michael was very satisfied with this. At least this guy had a good eye. Hearing Big Beard's wailing, Zichen was amused. These fellows were really lawless. In front of so many people, they started to shift the blame to others. Could they be more credible? However, it was understandable. These people had been tricked and suffered a huge loss. It was not strange for them to act so crazily. "Everyone, you saw it. The resources in his shop are fake. After refining them, my legs became crippled. It's over. I can't be a normal person for the rest of my life." Big Beard was still rolling on the ground. Michael said indifferently, "None of you saw it. Why aren't you leaving?" The others retreated far away, but they did not leave. Everyone saw it clearly. Besides, they already knew what kind of people Michael and the others were. If not for Zichen's shop persisting, who knew how many of them would have died because of the price increase in the 7 shops. However, they were mad as if they had lost their minds. No one dared to say anything. They could only wait and see. If Zichen could not handle this matter well, they could come back tomorrow. Even if they had to wait a few days, they could not close the shop. This hall of spiritual magic had become their only support. The smile on Zichen's face disappeared. "You lost out on the Blackstone. That's because you have bad eyesight. You can't blame anyone else. But now, you're pestering me endlessly and hindering my business. That's not fair." "So what if I'm not fair?" Michael stared at Zichen. He had already lost his mind. "I'm telling you, if you don't hand over the Blackstone, we won't let you do business in the future. This is just child's play. I have many moves to deal with you." Then, he turned around and pointed at the others. "And all of you, don't even think about coming here to buy anything. Wait for your death." Everyone was furious, but no one dared to say anything. "So powerful? Then let's try." Zichen walked forward. He arrived in front of Big Beard. If Zichen had not spoken up, Marcus would have killed this guy. Now, it seemed that sparing his life back then was the right choice. The other party had indirectly helped him earn a huge sum of money. It was a huge sum. With that power, Zicheng didn't need to spend anything else and could smoothly produce a lot of blackstone. It was equivalent to Michael and the others paying to help dig out the black stones, and they didn't ask for a single piece. When the bearded man saw Zicheng walking towards him, he wailed even louder. "Scream as much as you want. I won't kill you!" Zicheng smiled faintly and then directly attacked, easily cutting off Big Beard's forelimbs. Pooh! 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 The intense pain caused the bearded man to be unable to catch his breath. Even his howling stopped. Following that, Zicheng kicked out and sent Big Beard flying into the distance. Big Beard's body landed heavily on the ground. He continued to wail, but this time, there was a strong sense of fear in his voice. "Zicheng, how dare you kill someone here?" Michael pointed at Zicheng. "In your eyes, do you still have—" Before he could finish speaking, his raised arm suddenly separated from his body. Pooh! Because he was in the sixth power state and had a real body, when his arm fell off, blood immediately spurted out. Michael screamed in shock. Swoosh! The slaughter spirit began to circle around Michael and attacked, drawing rays of light one after another. After 3 rounds, Michael fell to the ground. He was already a human stick. All 4 of his limbs were cut off, and he stood there straight. The intense pain caused Michael to scream. "You broke the rules. Do you want to die?" The others looked at Zicheng in shock. They didn't expect him to be so bold to attack here. "What are you all waiting for? Hurry up and kill him!" Michael roared angrily. Zicheng broke the rules first. Even if they killed him now, it would be justified as self-defense. As soon as he said that, many people rushed out. But what awaited them was almost the same. Zicheng stood there without moving. The spirit of massacre was enough to settle all the battles. In the blink of an eye, the few people who rushed out were all human sticks, no different from Michael. As for the others who followed, they hid in the Hall of Spiritual Spells and didn't dare to come out again. It was obvious that they were aware that they were no match for Zicheng, and that they would only be courting death if they came out. Wails rang out, attracting even more people. Zicheng glanced at the crowd and said, "I said, if you scream again, you will die." With just one sentence, all the howls came to an abrupt end. Including Michael, no one was screaming anymore. He came to his senses, and his whole person was awake. All this time, they didn't go against Zicheng because of their strength. Because even a 6th realm spellbreaker would die instantly if he came here, let alone them. After waking up, he was a little scared. Luckily, Zicheng didn't kill anyone. Otherwise, they would have died for nothing. Seeing that the crowd stopped wailing, Zicheng said, "Take these guys away. If there is a next time, don't blame me for being merciless." As soon as he said that, the people inside immediately ran out and took the crowd away as fast as they could. Soon, the place returned to normal. Zicheng walked upstairs. This was just a small interlude. The trouble now was that the secret of the black stone had been exposed. It was almost impossible to get such a cheap mine. Moreover, Zicheng was more worried about whether the people inside would have designs on his black stone. After all, the black stone was very useful to the Shadow Destroyers. The other Shadow Destroyers were still waiting for him to bring it back to save their lives. The 7 halls of spiritual spells led by Michael had suffered a great loss. Naturally, this matter couldn't be left unsettled. Moreover, they had been turned into human sticks in front of everyone this time. It was an even bigger loss of face. All kinds of hatred added up, and they were about to go crazy. On the way back, everyone kept cursing and swearing. But after cursing, they still had to calm down and think about how to deal with Zicheng. Their injuries hadn't healed yet, so they gathered together again. Michael said as he healed, "Everyone, think of a way. We must vent our anger." Beside him, someone said, "You tried today. It's almost impossible to kill Zicheng with brute force. If we continue to provoke him, only death awaits. Unless—" Everyone looked at the person who spoke. A cold look flashed in his eyes. Unless we can contact the people inside. You know, there are many people who want to kill Zichin. Chapter 5137. I'm not going to update today, I'm going to sort out the rest of the story. Thunder Marshal is not updated today. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 5138. The 7 Hall Masters of the Hall of Spiritual Spells were sitting together to discuss how to deal with Zichin. It was impossible for them to kill Zichin with their own combat power. Hence, they had to seek help from the Hall of Spiritual Spells. But before they asked for help, they had to tell them the truth. This put them in a difficult position. What if the Hall of Spiritual Spells blamed them for their incompetence? No matter how they thought about it, they could not come up with a good idea. Just as they were at their wits' end, Michael suddenly said, "The most important thing is to clear our names. Only then will we not be punished by the Hall of Spiritual Spells." Everyone knew this, but how could they clear their names? The Hall of Spiritual Spells was in their hands, and their business was not good. And they were the ones who sold the black stone. How could they clear their names? Michael said, "Think about it. What is the reason for us to be forced to this point?" One of them said, "Zichin lowered the price." That was only one reason. Everyone knew that the second reason was that they had raised the price without permission, causing complaints everywhere. Of course, they had deliberately ignored their own mistakes. Michael shook his head and said, "Wrong. The main reason is that Hobson gave Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells a very low price, but not us. Hence, Zichin deliberately lowered the price and started a price war with us. The main culprit is Hobson." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. That's right. The main culprit was Hobson. Why didn't they think of shifting the blame? Also, why did we sell the black stone? Was it because Hobson colluded with Zichin and gave us false information? Michael gritted his teeth and said, "He deliberately harmed us. Naturally, the responsibility lies with him." Everyone was enlightened. If that was the case, this matter had nothing to do with them. This way, they could clear their names. As for how Hobson would be affected if they put the blame on him, no one had ever thought about it. Zichin knew that those guys would not let this matter go. As for what they would do, Zichin was not sure. But he was sure that it had something to do with the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Du and I, who had originally recruited him, had never appeared again after giving him this identity. Now that the power of the Black Stone had leaked out, how would the people inside react? Zichin did not know, but he firmly believed that the people inside would definitely intervene in this matter. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to send the second wave of black stones to the last living space of the Shadow Destroyer clan. On the same day, Michael sent the news inside. There had always been 2 voices regarding Zichin, the Shadow Destroyer. One was that he should be killed in order to prevent future trouble. They were considered radicals. The other side was relatively more peaceful. They said that since they had already broken through, they would wait and see. After all, they had also encountered a bottleneck. Although the news had been sent to the radical faction, the pacifist faction still had a say in the matter of Zichin. No one was interested in knowing whether the news was true or false because it was meaningless. What they cared about was the black stones that contained the power to kill flies, as well as Zichin's identity. Thus, the 2 factions sat together to discuss this matter. Among them was Dunny, the representative of the moderate faction. "What do you think of the black stone?" Du and I asked. "What do we think?" One of the radicals said. "Do we need to think about this kind of thing? Of course, we'll go outside and bring back all the black stones. According to the records, Zichin has already bought those mines," Du and I said. "These black stones belong to him. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to go out and take them back directly. He's just a shadow destroyer living an ignoble existence. What right does he have to negotiate with us? It's his good fortune that we're interested in the black stones," the radical said. "If he dares to say no, just kill him. the radical said. The shadow destroyers are all dead. He's just a fish that escaped the net. We're already being very kind to him by letting him live. As a dog, he should have the awareness of being a dog. The other radicals nodded their heads in agreement. They had always thought that Zichen was still alive because of their benevolence. The moderate faction frowned, thinking that this method was inappropriate. No matter what, Polfa City is a place of reason. If we rob without distinguishing right from wrong, it won't be good for our reputation. Duan I said. After all, we are not the only ones here. The radical faction said. Then let's first investigate who sold the mines privately. Without our permission, it's invalid. Duan I did not speak, still frowning. Duan I, you must know what the higher-ups want. They want us to bring back the black stones. Why do you keep stopping us? The radical faction stared coldly at Duan I. Oliver, you don't have to threaten me. Duan I said. I'm telling the truth. If we break the rules and make a big deal out of it, it won't be easy for everyone. As long as everything is within the rules, you can do whatever you want. You should have said so earlier. Oliver smiled coldly. Now, I'll show you how we can get the black stones within the rules and make Zichen understand that he's a dog at the same time. On the same day, Oliver went out alone. First, he went to Polfa Hall to look for Nankin. Nankin was the one who sold the mines to Zichen. After Oliver investigated, he found that there were no violations. Many people had seen the mines, and they had long declared them to be trash. As for the black stones, some people knew about them, but they also said they were trash. Moreover, this kind of sale of useless mines had happened many times. It could be said that over the years, only he, Nankan, had sold the mineral veins that were truly trash. The others had sold them with value. No matter how unreasonable Oliver was, it was impossible for him to find any problems or troubles here. It was written in black and white, and he could not take it back. Therefore, he went to Polfa Hall to investigate Hobson, but he still did not find any problems. Hobson gave him the price because he had the right to. However, Oliver did not stay idle. He removed Hobson from his position, which was also his right. After that, he appointed a new person. It was the 7th-strength realm person who had plotted against Zichen but failed. His previous position was slightly lower than Hobson's. The first thing he did after taking over was to restore the price to the original price. This way, Zichen's profit would be reduced by a lot because of the 10% discount. Under the lead of Michael and the others, Oliver went to look for Zichen. Outside Spiritual Spell Hall number 4, Oliver looked at the people in line and sneered. As long as he raised the price, the business here would naturally decline. What are you looking at? Hurry up and scram! Michael shouted at the people in line. Zichen, hurry up and get down here. Lord Oliver is here to inspect. Oliver stood there with an arrogant expression. He pointed at the ground in front of him and said, Later, let him kneel here. Chapter 51-39. The people in the queue retreated far away. Oliver sat outside the Hall of Spiritual Spells with his legs crossed, waiting for Zichen to come and kneel down. Michael and the others stood around with arrogant expressions on their faces. The people who were originally in the Hall of Spiritual Spells all ran out. It was obvious that these people were here to cause trouble. Zichen, get out here! Otherwise, I'll make sure your shop can't continue operating. Seeing that Zichen still hadn't appeared, Michael shouted again, and the others followed suit. Milia hurried upstairs to inform Zichen of the situation. When Zichen heard this, he walked downstairs with a displeased expression on his face. When he walked down the stairs and saw that the hall was empty, Zichen's expression turned even uglier. He walked out of the hall and saw Michael and the others. And after everyone saw Zichen, their faces immediately had a smug look. Michael pointed at Zichen and said, The Lord is here. Hurry up and kneel down! Zichen walked forward and punched Michael's head. Bang! Michael was sent flying. Such a scene had exceeded everyone's expectations. It was to the extent that everyone was stunned. Zichen, how dare you! Oliver shouted at Zichen, but he didn't get up. He just sat there. How dare you attack in front of the Lord? Do you want to die? After Michael steadied himself, he also shouted at Zichen. Zichen didn't continue attacking. He looked at the crowd coldly and said, I don't care where you came from. But if you make things difficult for my customers, you're courting death. Zichen narrowed his eyes, and his killing intent surged. My Hall of Spiritual Spells is a legal business. The people who come here to exchange for resources are also following the rules. What right do you have to chase them away? Zichen's words warmed the hearts of the people who had retreated. These people came from other halls of spiritual spells, but they obviously didn't treat them as humans. They came and went as they pleased. Now I'll count to 3. Whoever dares to stay here will die. Zichen's killing intent surged. It seemed that he was really angry. 1. With just one word, the others immediately retreated. Only Oliver was left, still sitting there. Although he wasn't scared off, the retreat of the others made Oliver feel like he had lost face. His expression was very ugly. Zichen, how dare you? Do you still have me in your eyes? Oliver rebuked. Zichen then looked at Oliver. What are you? Do I know you? Impudent! I'm on the same level as your family's Lord Dune. Why aren't you kneeling after seeing me? Oliver stood up angrily and stared coldly at Zichen. Zichen glanced at Oliver and said, Just this once, don't do it again. If this happens again and I see you chasing away my guests, don't blame me for killing you. After that, Zichen turned around. When he reached the door, he turned around and said, Get lost! Good, what an arrogant brat! Just wait for me to make you kneel down. Oliver was so angry that he laughed. Just wait for your Hall of Spiritual Spells to close. If you can't do it, I'll take your surname from now on. One look and I can tell that you're an unfilial descendant. What use do I have for you? Zichen's expression was full of sarcasm. Everyone had come proudly and left angrily. It wasn't that Oliver didn't want to attack Zichen, but there had to be a reason. So, he forcefully suppressed his anger. Just wait, let him be proud for another day. After returning, Oliver gritted his teeth and said, Next, we'll have a price war with him. The spirit-breaking department will give you the lowest price. When Michael and the others heard this, they were all happy. This was what they had always wanted to do. However, they didn't have anyone from the spirit-breaking department to cooperate. Michael said, My lord, the spirit-breaking department. Don't worry, I've already arranged it. Next, you just have to focus on the price war. Oliver said. If that's the case, then you just have to give Zichen a high price or not sell him resources. Naturally, his Hall of Spiritual Spells will be closed. Michael said. Oliver had thought about this problem when he came, but it obviously didn't follow the rules. When Zichen had caused a ruckus in the spirit-breaking department, the others didn't do anything. Hobson didn't show up because of this. No matter what, they had to be reasonable. For example, this time, they only dared to raise the price to the original price and didn't dare to raise it privately. The next day, Milia went to the spirit-breaking department to exchange for resources. When the price of the resources was reported, Milia was shocked. Please take a look. Is there a mistake? The price is wrong, right? There's nothing wrong. From today onwards, the people from Hall of Spiritual Spells 4 will pay this price. The person in the Seven Forces state walked out. He used to have a lower status than Hobson, but this time, Oliver had removed Hobson from his position. He had the final say here. Milia had no choice but to buy back these resources at a high price. The Hall of Spiritual Spells was waiting to be used. No matter what, she had to get the resources back first. Moreover, she had a feeling that no matter who came out next, the price wouldn't be lowered. After Milia took the resources back, she immediately went to find Zichen and informed him of the latest situation. After Zichen heard the news, he nodded and asked, 10% off. Did we make a profit? Yes, but very little. If the business is like this, we can make some profit. If the business is not good, then we will lose money. Milius said worriedly. Sir, is there trouble again? Zichen said. Don't worry. Let's take it one step at a time. Less than an hour after Maria's return, a voice suddenly sounded from outside. Good news, good news. The 7 halls of spiritual spells are open again, and they are all offering a 20% discount. When the news came out, it immediately caused an uproar. It should be known that Zichen's discount was only 10%. The 20% discount would save a lot of money. After the uproar, the people in the queue started to talk about it. However, there was a strange situation. There were people talking, but no one came out or went to take a look. What are you waiting for? Why don't you go there for a bargain? The person who sent the news said strangely. Why don't you take advantage of the bargain and line up here? What are you thinking? Some people wanted to leave and go to the shop with the 20% discount. Immediately, a person said in a strange tone, Go, go. When this hall of spiritual spells can handle it, and closes, the 20% discount will become 20% discount. That's right. It's not like this hasn't happened before. They are giving you a small profit now. Next, they will take your life. In the crowd, people were talking. They had been taken advantage of before, so they wouldn't be fooled again. Impossible. This time, the 7 shops have changed. This is a real discount. The person who came to send the news was anxious. Yes. It's a discount now. But who knows what a shop that doesn't treat its customers as people is scheming? The people were not stupid. They knew the principle of having a full meal. I say, don't be ungrateful. We are offering a 20% discount, but you don't want to go. Next, Zichen will raise the price for you. Chapter 5140. The person who came to deliver the news was a staff member of the 7 halls of spiritual law. He had not achieved his goal, so he was naturally angry. In addition, he had always been arrogant and looked down on these people. So, he decided to be rude to them. When the others saw that he was angry, they started to laugh. The other party thought that they were mocking him and said angrily, You idiots! You don't want to take advantage of the situation. You deserve to be cheated. We're happy. Even if you give us a 30% discount, we won't go. We'll make you angry. The others were laughing proudly. After experiencing what happened back then, they were even more aware of the value of Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells. In the past, when the other 7 halls of spiritual law had raised the prices, Zichen had raised the prices to a normal price and everyone was willing to buy from him. However, he still kept his promise and gave everyone a 10% discount. The people who came were very grateful. Naturally, they would remember this kindness. Now, the 7 halls of spiritual law were attacking them again. They knew what to do in order not to repeat the same mistake. Seeing that the crowd did not respond and still chose to line up, the person who came left angrily. The 7 halls of spiritual law opened at the same time. This time, there was no trick. Everyone who entered was given a 20% discount. The expected scene of business booming did not happen. However, it was much better than before. There were a few customers early in the morning. At Zichen's place, people were lining up to fight for it, and the prices were high. Their place was cheap and there was no need to line up. However, no one came. This made Michael and the others very depressed. They could not understand why this was happening. The prices were so low, but no one came? Did water enter their brains? At first, they thought that the news had not spread. So, they immediately arranged for people to spread the news. While promoting their low prices, they also announced that Zichen's shop was going to increase the price because the cost had increased. However, after a few days, the prices of Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Law did not increase. The discounts were still the same. The business was still very good. People were still lining up. When Oliver heard this, he felt that it was unbelievable. There was such a thing in the world. However, after checking, it was true. This made him very angry. So, he said, 30% discount! Not only was there no discount, but they would also lose money. Such a big discount immediately attracted many people. When Zichen heard this, he was stunned. It seemed that those people were really crazy. However, he didn't care. How long would they be able to do this kind of loss-making business? Moreover, after experiencing the previous incident, everyone was vigilant in their hearts and would not be easily fooled again. After the 30% discount, the business did improve, but it was not to the point where there was a queue. Although Zichen's business was a little worse, the line was still there. As time passed, the flow of people gradually decreased, and there were no longer any signs of queuing. Maria and the others were worried. In just 5 days, the 7 spiritual spell halls added a new rule for the people who came to the store to purchase resources. As long as one turned in the jade token of spiritual spell hall number 4, one would be able to enjoy a 40% discount. When this news came out, it immediately caused an uproar. One had to know that a 30% discount was a bargain, and a 40% discount was even more so. It was a money-losing business. However, the expected business boom did not happen. Everyone who came here did not get to enjoy the 40% discount. In other words, no one handed over the jade token of the number 4 shop. After the previous incident, they were very vigilant and knew that this was a trap against the number 4 shop. They also knew that the number 4 shop used to be profitable because the resources from the spirit-breaking shop were cheap. But now, the prices had increased. However, the number 4 shop was still willing to give a 10% discount. That was a good price. If the number 4 shop could not hold on and close down, what awaited them would be a continuous increase in prices. When that happened, how many people would be able to hold on? Therefore, after the 7 spiritual spell halls set up such a place, the number of people in the store decreased significantly. Everyone started to return. Even if they had to queue, they still had to wait. In the restaurant, Kant and Hobson sat opposite each other. Kant took the initiative to say, "I let you down last time. This time, take it as an apology." Hobson shook his head and said, "It's my fault for not being firm enough. It has nothing to do with you." Hobson had told Michael everything that Kant had said at the table. After all, they had known each other for many years. However, even if Hobson had not told him, Zichen would have thought of other ways to deliberately spread the news and interfere with Michael and the others' judgment. He had even arranged for people to come here in advance. However, Hobson had done his job very well. Kant raised his wine glass and said, "But no matter what, we wanted to use you first. So, Master asked me to come and apologize." Hobson said, "Zichen is very thoughtful. Unfortunately, I'm no longer in charge, so I don't have much say over there." Kant smiled and said, "Oldhua, we are sincere in our apology. We are not scheming like you think. We are also not here to ask you for help." How should I put it? Master said that he does not want me to lose you as a friend." Hobson immediately stood up and said, I am sorry. Then, he raised his wine glass and made a toast in a certain direction. Hobson sat down again and asked, "This time, there are people inside who are deliberately targeting Hall of Spiritual Magic number 4. What do you plan to do next?" Kant said, "They have already ruined their reputation. It will be much more difficult for them to do the same thing again." Hobson did not understand and asked, "Why would they be alarmed?" Kant said, "Actually, they are here for the black stone." "Is that really something good?" Hobson was a little surprised. "Of course. How can Master's judgment be wrong?" Asterisk 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 Oliver did not expect that such a huge discount would not affect Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Magic. Moreover, they could not keep the 30% discount forever. After the 20% discount was restored, business was obviously not good. Those people would rather buy a 10% discount than a 20% discount. Therefore, Oliver could only think of other ways. In the end, he asked Big Beard to appear in front of Zichen's shop and say that there was a problem with the resources he had bought from him. Naturally, no one believed him. However, right after that, a group of people came from the spirit-breaking office. They represented the law enforcers and wanted to forcibly close Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Magic. From today onwards, Hall of Spiritual Magic number 4 is no longer allowed to have crystal translucent. We, the spirit-breaking office, disqualify you. A law enforcer of the Sixth Forces state looked indifferently at Milia and the others who were standing at the door. Now leave quickly. Why? Milia and the others looked aggrieved. He is slandering us. We did not do anything. There is no reason. Just do as you are told. If you are not convinced, you can go to the spirit-breaking office to complain. As for when we will be able to lift the ban, that will depend on our mood. Now. Chapter 51-41. Bam! The Sixth Forces State Cultivator was sent flying by the powerful shockwave. When the others saw this, their expressions changed. They took out their weapons and stared coldly at Quebec. Zichen stood in front of Milia and the others and stared at them coldly. Do you want to die? Zichen, how dare you attack us? Another Sixth Forces State Cultivator shouted at Zichen. Do you know who we are? Zichen responded with another punch. The Sixth Forces State Cultivator was sent flying. I don't care who you are, Zichen said coldly. These resources were exchanged from the Spirit Destroyer. If there's a problem, it's the Spirit Destroyer's problem. What does it have to do with us? You've come to make trouble for me again and again. Do you really think I'm not angry? Zichen stepped forward and punched the cultivator again and again, causing him to howl in pain. When the bearded man saw this, he was scared and ran away. He hid in the distance and looked at the scene in front of the Hall of Spiritual Spells where Zichen kept punching. His fists smashed down, and the sound of explosions was endless. Zichen, how dare you! Some people were howling and some were scolding. For a moment, it was very noisy. In the distance, Oliver and the others were watching but did not step forward. The time was not right yet. Zichen, you son of a bitch! Do you still have the Spirit Destroyer in your eyes? A Sixth Forces State Cultivator with blood on the corner of his mouth pointed at Zichen and scolded. You don't know what's good for you and ignore the rules. Do you want to die? Zichen looked at him, and his eyes became colder. Poof! The other party's outstretched arm was directly severed. After losing his arm, the man screamed in horror. Murder! Zichen killed someone! Men, quickly arrest this guy who disregards the rules for me. Immediately, a few people rushed forward. They flew up and charged at Zichen. Buzz! The slaughter spirit turned into a ray of light and passed by them. Following that, cries of alarm rang out as everyone fell to the ground one after another. If they weren't missing an arm, they were missing a leg. It seemed that in this shattering Dharma city, only Zichen dared to act recklessly. Come out! What's the point of hiding in the dark like a rat? Zichen no longer cared about the people who were wailing on the ground. He stared into the distance, his eyes growing colder. A group of people walked out, led by Oliver, followed by Michael and the rest. You've got guts. You actually dared to make a move here. Oliver squinted his eyes and said coldly, ignoring the rules of Pofa City, do you want to die? Zichen's figure flickered, and he immediately rushed towards Oliver. His response was a punch. You're courting death! Oliver shouted. He was at the 7th strength state, so he was naturally not afraid of Zichen. Boom! The two of them exchanged a punch, and a powerful shockwave rippled out. Michael and the rest, who were behind Oliver, immediately retreated into the distance. They didn't expect Zichen to be so bold as to attack a 7th strength state master from inside. After the punch, Zichen took a step forward and released a powerful aura. At this moment, he didn't hide his strength. He released the strength of a shadow destroyer. Although they were both at the 6th strength state, Zichen's aura was much stronger. Everyone immediately felt a terrifying pressure. It was as if even breathing had become difficult. Another punch. Dong! With a powerful shockwave, Oliver's body slid backward. His expression was ugly, and he shouted at Zichen. Zichen, do you want to die? The bone rod appeared in Zichen's hand, and an endless amount of energy immediately gathered into it. Then, he smashed it down. Boom! The terrifying energy surged, and Oliver was sent flying by the rod. Swoosh! Zichen's figure flickered, and he quickly approached his opponent. The bone rod in his hand smashed down again. At the same time, the slaughter spirit appeared and charged towards his opponent. Poof! As Oliver retreated, a bloody hole immediately appeared on his body. He could barely block the bone rod, but he couldn't avoid the slaughter spirit that followed. Looking at this scene, everyone was stunned. This was a true battle of life and death. Zichen was serious. Oliver looked at Zichen and was terrified to the extreme. He quickly retreated in fear. Poof! The light of spirit commandeering was omnipresent, and it pierced his heart again. Come, kill him! Kill him! Oliver, who was retreating, shouted in horror. But at this moment, who dared to stop Zichen? No one here was a match for Zichen. No one even dared to persuade him. The people watching from afar couldn't wait to cheer. These people were too evil. They deserved this outcome. Michael and the rest didn't dare to step forward. Zichen was obviously crazy now. He even dared to attack Oliver. If it were them, they might have been killed directly. They didn't believe that Oliver would seek justice for them. Don't fight, don't fight! Oliver shouted. I came out this time only for the black stone. I won't target you anymore. You give me the black stone. I only want the black stone. Oliver gave in. Since he could say such words in front of others, it was obvious that Oliver was really scared. There were already 5 holes in his body. If this continued, he would definitely die. When Michael and the rest heard this, their hearts were filled with despair. They knew that they had completely lost their chance to compete with Zichen. Once Oliver backed out, they wouldn't be able to get the lowest price. Whether they could keep the Hall of Spiritual Spells would be another problem. Zichen didn't say anything. He just attacked. The bone staff combined with the slaughtering spirit forced Oliver to retreat. Stop fighting! Stop fighting! No matter how Oliver shouted, Zichen didn't hold back. If he didn't settle this today, there would be trouble in the future. Buzz! Zichen put away the bone rod. However, there was light in his palm. The crisscrossing light formed a horizontal and vertical rule. It moved straight forward. Once it passed through Oliver's body, he would definitely be torn into pieces. It would be difficult for Oliver to dodge this attack when he was seriously injured. This was really fatal. Just as Oliver was about to lose his life, a ray of light suddenly landed on his body and forcibly took him away. All right, that's enough. A voice sounded. It was the real manager of Hall of Spiritual Spells number 4. Dune! He brought Oliver behind him. Then, he looked at Zichen and smiled. Zichen, that's enough. Zichen stood there. His eyes were still cold. However, the light around him had dissipated. You know? He looked at the smiling Dune. Dune nodded and said, I will give you an explanation for this. Then, Dune turned around and looked at Oliver. You don't have to worry about this anymore. Oliver's face was very gloomy. However, he was seriously injured. He didn't say anything. He just glanced at Zichen coldly and left. Chapter 51-42. As soon as Du and I finished speaking, there was an uproar all around. The 7 halls of spiritual magic were closing? There were exclamations. There were cheers. They were very happy to see Zichen take control of the halls of spiritual magic. Because compared to Michael and the rest, Zichen was much more conscientious. Next, their good days were coming. But Zichen was not happy because of this. He looked at Du and I and said, You're here for the black stone too? Du and I did not speak, but his silence was a tacit agreement. The people inside valued the black stone very much, so he had to bring it back this time. Zichen said, The black stone is useful to me. I can't give it to you. Zichen was not telling the truth. Actually, the black stone was very useful to the shadow destroyers. Although he was a shadow destroyer, he could use other resources too. Du and I did not expect Zichen to be so tough. Actually, when Oliver came out, he also came out. It was just that one was in the light, and the other was in the dark. Oliver did whatever he wanted in the light, while he was in the dark to find out about the black stone. After knowing what happened, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Michael and the rest deserved to go crazy against Zichen. It was because Zichen played them like a fool. For example, the black stone was clearly a good thing, but he sold it to them for 50 strands of strength. That was not a scam. But then, Zichen bought it back for 10 strands of strength. Zichen made a lot of money. And Michael and the rest were completely scammed. Now, it was his turn. He did not expect Zichen to not give him face, so he said, "Name a price." "I'll buy it," Zichen said. "Those resources are useless to me. I can use them to exchange for the black stone with you." Du and I said, "There is a lot of black stone in your mine. I'm only taking a portion back for research. If I can't bring the black stone back, people like Oliver will come out again. It was not a good idea to continue like this," Zichen said. "Then, how about I give you 10,000 yuan? Du and I smiled helplessly. "You're a shadow destroyer after all. How can you be so petty?" 100,000, that's all," Zichen said. Dunny nodded. This was also considered as completing his mission. Michael and the others wanted to die when they heard that. Back then, they had obtained hundreds of thousands of blackstones, but they were cheated by Zichen. "How much? 1,000 strands of power per piece?" Du and I asked again. Hearing this price, Michael and the others wanted to kill themselves. If they still had the blackstone, they would have made 20 times the profit. And when it came to Zichen, it was 100 times more expensive. And from Dunny's tone, it was clear that there was still room for negotiation. Unexpectedly, in the face of such a high price, Zichen said, "I'll give it to you." Du and I did not refuse. She gave Zichen a thumbs up and smiled. "You're so generous." Zichen looked back at Milia and said, "Give 10 blackstones to the big boss." Milia was stunned. Then she looked at Du and I. Could it be that he was the real mastermind behind the Hall of Spiritual Spells? Du and I was in a good mood. He smiled and nodded at Milia. Milia quickly brought over the blackstones. "Although I don't know the final results of the research, I believe that there will be a huge demand for blackstones." Du and I said, "Why don't we work together?" Zichen looked at Du and I. Du and I said, "I'll give you the authority to look for blackstones. How about that?" Zichen's expression changed slightly. He understood the real meaning behind Dunny's words. Zichen now only controlled a few abandoned mineral veins. And these were all bought from the Hall of Soul. And as a member of the Hall of Soul, Du and I had a lot of power. Once he was appointed to the Hall of Soul, he would have a lot of power. Zichen was a little tempted. It was so big outside. It was very likely that more blackstone veins would be found. And in terms of probability, new veins were naturally more likely to be found than abandoned veins. Think about it. Wait for me next time. Du and I went back. He didn't lie. On the same day, Hobson came to the Hall of Spiritual Law No. 4 and said that he wanted to see Zichen. He took over the Hall of Soul Destruction again, and resumed his original duties. Next, he would still give Zichen a very low price. Zichen asked about the other 7 halls of spiritual law. Hobson told him that the procedures were being done. During this time, the resources of the 7 halls of spiritual law needed to be calculated. It would take some time. During this time, Zichen didn't have to show up. What he needed to do was to prepare enough resources. When the time came, he would take back the resources and pay the rent to the Hall of Soul Destruction. This would take about a month. On the same day, the 7 halls of spiritual law were closed. Everyone came to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Law No. 4. At the same time, Zichen told Milia to recruit some new people and prepare to take over the 7 halls of spiritual law in a month's time. "Is it easy to find people?" Zichen asked. Milia nodded and said, Of course it's easy. We don't have to go out to fight here. Also, the benefits are good. It's easy to find people. Zichen nodded and signaled for Milia to do this. Zichen, on the other hand, was thinking about the black stone. Before this, Zichen planned to go back and bring back the black stone that he had mined this time. Then, he would consider looking for a mine. Zichen took all the black stone and left on the same day. After returning to the living space of the Shadow Destroyers, everyone had made great progress. Some of them could even speak. Zichen left the black stone behind and then left. After returning, he was thinking about the mine. Now he needed people he could trust. Miao Pengfei and Hu Jing had been outside for too long. It was time for them to come in. Zichen thought of another problem. Since there was black stone here, would there be black stone outside as well? After all, the land outside was very vast. There were even kill crystals. Perhaps there would be black stone too. Zichen found Kant and said, Find some people you trust and search outside the city. See if there are any black stone mines. Kant was a little troubled. Those are the people I trust. Sir, you want to use them? They were the people who had conflicts with Zichen. Now, because Kant was too close to Zichen, they did not like Kant. You just need to trust them. Tell them that whoever finds a black stone mine will get an inner core as a reward, Zichen said. And there will be a basic reward on a daily basis. Okay, I'll go now. Kant left excitedly. He believed that they would not refuse such a reward. After all, they were still in the 5-strength state. A single inner core could help them advance. Kang De found Phoebe and the others. When they saw Kang De, they naturally didn't have a good expression. Each and every one of them ridiculed him. Kant was used to it. When he saw them, he said, Sir Zichen said that he needs some people to find the mine. Kant, what do you think we are? Are we miners? That's right. It's fine if you're a dog, but you want to call us over? You don't care about your identity anymore. We're spellbreakers. How can we help people mine? Everyone looked at him with disdain and cold eyes. Kant said, Sir Zichen also said that whoever finds a black stone mine will be rewarded with an inner core. Bah! Inner core? Phoebe's expression changed. Are you sure? Is it the inner core? Are you guys going or not? If not, I'll find someone else, Kant said again. Why shouldn't I go? Phoebe immediately said. How many martial crystals did Zichen take from us? There's no reason for him to take all the benefits. Now we'll get back our losses double from him. That's right. Double it. Chapter 51-43. Zichen came to the outskirts of the city. After so many years, he finally came out again. This area had changed greatly long ago. Buildings were everywhere, and the construction was very neat. No one recognized Zichen when he arrived. After he told them the reason for his visit and found out that he was looking for Miao Pengfei, many people looked at him strangely. It was rare to see someone daring to call the Lord by his name. Follow me. Someone seemed to feel that Zichen was not ordinary. He took the initiative to lead the way for Zichen. When they arrived at Miao Pengfei's residence, the person did not knock on the door. Instead, he cupped his fists and said, Lord, someone is looking for you. Who is looking for me? Miao Pengfei's voice came from the room. When he opened the door and saw Zichen standing there, he was stunned. He was stunned. He could not believe his eyes. He blinked hard and rubbed them. The subordinate was also stunned. Why was the Lord doing this? Zichen, it's really you! Miao Pengfei shouted excitedly. The subordinate who led the way was shocked when he heard the name. He looked at the person beside him in shock. Now, in this area, the name Zichen had become a legend. In the past, this place was extremely chaotic. Many people died because of all kinds of embezzlement. After Zichen appeared, he changed everything with his own strength. In addition, Zichen himself was also extraordinary. He eventually became the Shadow Destroyer with the highest status. All along, everyone knew that Zichen, who had gone to Pofa City, was still guarding this place. This was also the main reason why this place was becoming more and more prosperous. However, they had only heard of Zichen's legend but had never seen him in person. They did not expect to see him today. Go find Hu Zhilai. Miao Pengfei looked at his subordinate who was in a daze and said, Tell him that Zichen is here. Yes. The subordinate nodded and left immediately. He looked back from time to time. He still could not believe that this was Lord Zichen. Why are you here? Miao Pengfei was very excited to see Zichen. I'm here to see how you're enjoying yourself outside. Zichen said. You're already in the 4th strength state. Why don't you go to Pofa City? Miao Pengfei said. I heard that it's very chaotic inside. It's fine for me to stay outside. Moreover, if I were to leave, I wouldn't feel at ease here. After all, this is what we worked so hard for. We can't go back to the past. Miao Pengfei pointed at the surroundings and said, Look, compared to before, the area has become much wider. Furthermore, we have also discovered more mineral veins. At this point, Miao Pengfei suddenly said with some shame, I forgot you didn't gain anything from it. Zichen patted his head. You're so pretentious. Miao Pengfei smiled. If he really cared about this, he wouldn't be Zichen. 2 hours later, Hu Jinkai arrived. Right now, his status was equal to Miao Pengfei's, and he was in another camp. Zichen, it's really you. Hu Jing came closer, still in disbelief. Why did you suddenly come out? I'm here to look for you. You two discuss. One of you will stay outside, and the other will go in to help me, Zichen said. The two were stunned, then looked at Zichen, as if trying to figure out how much truth there was in his words. This is only temporary. After everything is settled here, the other one will go in too, Zichen said. Are you two really going to stay here forever? Hu Jing scratched his head. What's wrong with this place? Zichen said. This place is pretty good, but it's a little small. You two discuss and see who will go in with me. Also, you two send the order. I need to find this ore and see if I can find similar mineral veins. Zichen took out a few dozen black stones. The two of them took the black stones and examined them carefully. What is this? Miao Pengfei asked. Zichen explained. It's a kind of power ore that contains the power of a shadow destroyer. You can't sense it, but if you find something similar, you can get someone to bring it to the city and let me judge. I'm afraid there's no shadow destroyer power here, right? Hu Jing said. If you're talking about the power of a shadow destroyer beast, we might be able to help. Shadow destroyer beast? Zichen was startled. Hu Jing said. Yes, there's only a shadow destroyer beast outside. Where would there be a shadow destroyer? But even if it's the power of a shadow destroyer beast, ordinary people might not be able to get it. The shadow destroyer beast is invisible and silent when it kills. Zichen was stunned. Hu Jing held the black stone in his hand and said, Let's try, but don't get your hopes up. Shadow destroyer beast, yes, shadow destroyer beast. Zichen's eyes suddenly lit up. Why didn't he think of that? A shadow destroyer beast was a dead shadow destroyer. And in this area, there were vanishing shadow beasts. Then, would there be a blackstone mine in the place where they lived? After all, others might not be able to feel the power in the blackstone, but the shadow destroyer could. Zichen looked at Hu Jing. It was Hu Jing's words that had given him a clear direction. You two have a good discussion. I'll make a trip to the Kill Crystal Mine. Zichen left after saying that. Be careful, Miao Pengfei reminded. I heard that there are always abnormalities there. It's already been sealed. Zichen waved his hand at the two of them without even turning his head. His figure quickly disappeared. Along the way, many people came out and looked at Zichen with reverence. Evidently, the crowd already knew his identity. After leaving the area far away, Zichen took to the air and flew into the distance. This caused even more exclamations. It was the first time they saw someone fly. What do you think? After Zichen left, Hu Jing looked at Miao Pengfei. Miao Pengfei said, "I'll go first. I'll leave this place to you. I've always wanted to go to Pofa City to take a look. With Zichen's help, it shouldn't be bad." Hu Jing didn't argue and nodded directly. Zichen went straight to the Kill Crystal Mine. This place was his blessed land, and he hadn't been here for a long time. Most importantly, there were shadow destroyer beasts here too. This mine had been sealed, and there was no one there. Many buildings had collapsed. It was already night time. Zichen didn't enter the mine to investigate, but he summoned the massacre spirit. The massacre spirit was very sensitive to killing intent. It entered the mine on its own. Zichen walked nearby. Perhaps he could find a shadow destroyer beast. Of course, the prerequisite was that the shadow destroyer beast he saw before hadn't disappeared or left. After walking for 2 hours, Zichen, who found nothing, picked up some dry wood and started a bonfire. Next, he just had to wait for the shadow destroyer beast to come. Another 2 hours later, Zichen sensed something unusual. He got up and looked into the distance. A figure appeared there. In the past, Zichen would only feel fear when he saw such a being. But now that he knew their identity, he couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity and sadness. He took out a black stone and instantly drew the energy from it. Then, he raised his hand and waved the energy forward. The energy directly entered the Shadow Destroyer Beast's body. The Shadow Destroyer Beast's originally dim body seemed to solidify a little. It stood there, a little confused. It seemed to have never encountered such a situation. Chapter 5144. The Shadow Destroyer Beast, or rather, the Shadow Destroyer in soul form, stood there motionless. It seemed to have not reacted from before. After all, the beings he had encountered before could not see him. Zichen said again, "Take me to where you're hiding." The other party still did not respond. Zichen thought for a moment, then released the Shadow Destroyer's aura. At the same time, he used the Shadow Destroyer's soul power and said, "Do you have any other companions who can take me to where they are?" This time, the other party seemed to understand. It turned around and walked into the distance. Zichen followed behind. About 2 hours later, Zichen encountered the second Shadow Destroyer. The other party flew over, as if asking the previous one why he had brought people here. Zichen could not understand their conversation, but he knew what to do. He raised his hand and absorbed the energy of a black stone, sending it into the second Shadow Destroyer's body. The Shadow Destroyer was taken aback and did not ask further. Then the two of them helped to lead the way. This time, they walked for a full 4 hours. The sky was about to brighten. Zichen saw some Shadow Destroyers gathering here. When they saw Zichen, the uninvited guest, they all flew over, seeming very vigilant. Zichen swept his gaze and looked ahead. There were about 50 to 60 Shadow Destroyers. Some of them were coming over, but some were in the distance, and did not do anything when they saw him coming. There was a mountain peak here. A mountain peak that was not very tall stood alone here. The Shadow Destroyers in the distance were leaning against the mountain peak, their entire bodies almost sticking to it. Zichen walked forward. Some Shadow Destroyers tried to rush towards Zichen and attack him. Buzz! Zichen released his Shadow Destroyer aura. Under this aura, the Shadow Destroyers all stopped. They felt a strong pressure, like a bloodline suppression. Zichen ignored these Shadow Destroyers. With soul power perception, he naturally knew that these beings looked strong but were actually very weak. Some could barely float and had no fighting power at all. To put it bluntly, he was just being pretentious. If Zichen wanted to, he only needed a single thought to create a storm of soul power to wipe them out. Zichen walked forward and saw a very small Shadow Destroyer curled up there. Judging from his size, he looked like a human child. His aura was very weak. Right now, he was in a curled up state. It seemed like he was trying to minimize his consumption of energy. Its body clung tightly to the mountain peak. Looking ahead, Zichen discovered some similar shadow destroyers. Their movements were almost identical to the one in front of him. They looked like the old, weak, sick, and disabled humans. Suddenly, the motionless child stood up. His originally weak soul force suddenly surged and became extremely active. Then, the soul power around his body began to dissipate. When the other shadow destroyers saw this, they all stood there and looked at each other. His body began to disintegrate. He was about to disappear. The surge of soul power was just a momentary lapse of consciousness. The shadow destroyer who had brought Zichen here immediately stepped forward and spat out a beam of soul light. This beam of light entered the other party's body and stabilized his dissipating soul. But it was useless. After a breath, the other party's soul continued to dissipate. That shadow destroyer spat out 2 more beams of soul power, but they were still useless. Just then, a shadow destroyer stepped forward and seemed to want to take the other party away by force. Clearly, this shadow destroyer's life had come to an end. Zichen was a little moved. He took out 2 black stones, immediately absorbed the energy within, and waved them forward. The energy was like a ball of soul power light that landed on the child. The soul power surged and enveloped the child's body. His soul that was about to collapse stabilized once again. Such a scene attracted the attention of the group of shadow destroyers. Zichen took out 2 more black stones, absorbed the energy within, and then sent the energy into the other party's body. The child absorbed the soul power, and his body became solid again. Soon, his soul stabilized. After waiting for orders to protect him, he immediately looked at Zichen and bowed to him. Swoosh! Zichen raised his hand and sent several more balls of energy into the bodies of the shadow destroyers next to him. These were people whose soul power was extremely weak and could not hold on for long. With this soul power, at least they would not die for the time being. The other shadow destroyers all gathered around. All of them looked at Zichen curiously and expectantly. Zichen looked at them with guilt in his eyes. If he had not come out this time and happened to hear Hu Zheng's words, he would not have thought of this at all. If he had come a long time ago, he would have been able to save many shadow destroyers. Then, Zichen took out a large number of black stones and threw them forward. The black stones scattered and went straight for the shadow destroyers. Every shadow destroyer received a piece of black stone. After receiving the black stones, they began to absorb the energy within. Of course, they were not as fast as Zichen, but they could maintain their own lives. Seeing this, Zichen relaxed and walked forward. If he was not mistaken, this mountain peak definitely contained black stones. Otherwise, they would not be leaning so tightly against the mountain peak when they were about to die. But they did not have the power to break it open. So even though there was a treasure mountain, they did not have the key to open it. Zichen had not opened it yet. The mine in the periphery did not belong to him yet. If he opened it rashly, it would only help others. Moreover, with the shadow destroyers here, no one else could discover this place. If he wanted this place, he had to go back and think of a way to take it for himself. Zichen walked closer and released his perception, wanting to explore the mountain peak. He did not sense anything. But he believed in these shadow destroyers and their instinctive perception. Zichen took out almost 1,000 black stones and placed them here. These black stones were enough to maintain their lives. Then Zichen turned and left. Some of the shadow destroyers followed. Zichen looked at them and said, "You stay here and guard this place." Not caring if they could understand, Zichen used the identity of a shadow destroyer to send a spiritual message to them. Finally, he pointed at the mountain peak. Then Zichen left. When he returned to the place with the killing crystal mine, the sky was already bright. Zichen did not see the killing spirit outside the cave. Perhaps it was devouring the killing intent in the crystals. Zichen decided to go in and take a look. After all, the last time he was here, he was only in the 5-strength realm. Now that he was in the 6-strength realm, his combat power was stronger. Even if there was any danger inside, he could deal with it. Zichen walked forward and entered the mine. Chapter 5145. No one was more familiar with this mineral vein in front of him than Zichin. The path deeper was not wet, and he did not sense any killing intent along the way. It should have been absorbed by the slaughter spirit. Zichin, who was familiar with the path, was trying to sense the slaughter spirit. As he continued forward, his soul power was the first to spread out. Soon, Zichen's expression changed. Swoosh! His figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already deep in the mine. His slaughter spirit was crashing around in a small area, as if it was sealed by a strange force. Zichin was about 10 feet away from the slaughter spirit at this moment. He did not go forward immediately. Instead, he looked ahead and said, "Come out, I know you're here." A person walked out from the front. It was a young man wearing a black robe. His aura was very cold, and his eyes were without any color. "I've seen you before." Zichin looked at the other party. The last time he was here, he saw a flash of light. At that time, he thought it was an illusion. "I've seen you too," the other party said, his voice very cold. This coldness was not deliberate, but innate. Because if he guessed correctly, the other party should have been revived from the kill crystal. Zichin pointed at the slaughter spirit and said, "Give it back to me." The other party said, "It can stay here." Zichin frowned slightly and said, "It's mine." "I know." The other party said again, "It needs the killing intent here, so it can stay here." Zichin looked at the other party, and did not say anything. The other party took the initiative to say, "This is my gratitude to you." Zichin did not know where the gratitude came from. To be honest, he had avoided danger several times through the kill crystal here. "My name is Zichin. Yuan Sha." After saying this, the sealed slaughter spirit turned into a stream of light and flew back to Zichen's side. Obviously, Yuan Sha wanted Zichin to make a choice. Zichin looked at the slaughter spirit. Through the emotional response, the slaughter spirit came here and did not encounter any danger. Shwa! In the next moment, Zichin controlled the slaughter spirit to fly in front of Yuan Sha. Yuan Sha stretched out 2 fingers and grabbed the spirit of slaughter. Zichin asked, "When can I take it away?" "Any time." This allowed Zichin to relax. After nodding at the other party, he turned around and left. Now that he no longer had to worry about this area, he had to think of a way to control this area. After returning to the encampment, Zichin told Miao Pengfei that there was no rush to leave with him. They could talk about it after dealing with the matters here. After that, he returned to Shattering Dharma City alone. When they arrived at Spiritual Spell Hall No. 4, Kant was already waiting there. He informed Phoebe and the others that they had started moving. During this period, there was another piece of bad news. That was, they didn't find any blackstone in the mines they had purchased. However, he had only seen a rough idea of what was going on, and had yet to dig deeper. He could not rule out the possibility of a miracle happening later on. Oliver had failed outside and failed to bring the black stone back. It could be said that he had lost the face of the radical faction. After returning, he was unwilling to give up. He started to sow discord and distort the facts. Hence, when Du and I brought back 100,000 blackstones, he was still criticized by the radical faction for bringing back too little. They said that Zichin, as a member of Shattering Dharma City, should contribute all the blackstones for free. Du and I was too lazy to care about the radical faction's actions. After taking back the blackstones, Du and I received a message a few days later. No matter what, he had to get more blackstones. Hence, Du and I went to Zichin again and said that he wanted to buy more blackstones. During this period, Du and I also revealed some information, such as the strong willpower inside. Zichin naturally understood what he meant. He also knew that he couldn't keep all the blackstones. In the end, each blackstone was priced at 2,000 streams of energy. During this period, Zichin also made a request, which was to have absolute control of the area outside. Du and I was puzzled. Zichin explained the reason. At the same time, he also said that it was possible to find more blackstones outside. Du and I agreed. This kind of thing wasn't difficult for him. Plus, Zichen had plenty of energy now. Hence, after paying 10 million streams of energy, he bought the area outside the city controlled by Miao Pengfei and the others. From today onwards, all the resources would be handed over to Zichen. With Duni's face, this price was actually half selling and half giving away. There was almost no loss, but it would take many years to recover. When Du and I came out of Shattering Soul Palace, he was holding 2 special pieces of paper. He handed them to Zichen and said, "You can use them twice. You don't have to say anything to Shattering Soul Palace. You can forcefully buy the area." This was equivalent to giving Zichen absolute authority over the 2 mineral veins. Of course, the premise was that Zichen could find 2 blackstone mines here. This time, when Du and I went back, he brought back 200,000 blackstones. Of course, this time, he bought them at a high price. Zichen didn't stay idle. He gave Kant a piece of paper so that he could make his own decision at a critical moment. Kant took this piece of paper and went to find Phoebe and the others. He also hoped that these people could find a blackstone mine as soon as possible. After Marcus had made arrangements for the original blackstone vein, he led his men to the other abandoned veins to mine. This time, they would dig deeper to see if there would be a miracle. Although these people didn't dig for blackstones anymore, they still had a considerable income every day. Everyone was busy, and there was a reward for being busy. Therefore, every day, Zichen would pay a certain price in order to search for the blackstone vein. Zichen left Shattering Spell City again and went to find Miao Pengfei. He asked Miao Pengfei to find some relatively reliable people. He was ready to start digging for blackstone mines here. Before that, Zichen had to go there personally to take a look. Calculating the time, the Shadow Destroyers should have almost finished refining the blackstones. When he arrived at the mountain peak, Zichen discovered that there were still hundreds of blackstones. It seemed that after he left, they hadn't fought over them, and were even trying their best to save as much as possible. When Zichen arrived at the mountain peak, all the Shadow Destroyers surrounded him. Zichen raised his hand and waved it forward. The rocks in front of him rolled down. Zichen began to dig deeper, and soon, a deep pit appeared. The Shadow Destroyers guessed what Zichen was going to do, and they all became excited. An hour later, Zichen dug out a huge piece of black stone with a clanging sound. After digging out the black stone and sensing it carefully, Zichen's eyes lit up. It was indeed a blackstone mine. The energy contained within even surpassed that of the mine in Shattering Spell City. The other Shadow Destroyers also gathered around and stared curiously at the blackstone. Zichen put the blackstone aside and continued digging. Then, he saw an endless stream of ore. He roughly estimated that this mine was not small. Such a mine naturally needed someone to guard it. Even a powerhouse. Chapter 5146. Zichen was still busy outside Pofa City. After all, the crystals found in this black stone vein were of higher quality. He could not afford to lose them. He walked around the mountain peak and dug holes in several places. He found black stones all over the place. Wherever he went, the Shadow Destroyers followed. After seeing Zichen dig out the black stones, they were all very excited. Zichen gave them the black stones. This mine was not small, and Zichen was very satisfied. Next, it was time to think about the mining. And what should he do with these Shadow Destroyers? Unfortunately, none of them could speak. They could not even communicate with soul power. Therefore, some of Zichen's ideas could not be implemented. Right now, what he wanted to do the most was to gather all the shadow extinguishers here. After all, with these black stones, their lives were not in danger. Next, as long as they kept refining, they could grow, communicate, and finally have true bodies. Suddenly, Zichen thought of the old man from Soul Mountain. Perhaps he could go back again and bring some Shadow Destroyers out from there? This idea was clearly feasible. Before that, the Shadow Destroyers still needed to stay here. Without Zichen's orders, they knew to guard this place. Zichen started to turn back. When he passed by the kill crystal vein, Zichen went in again and saw Yuan Sha. Yuan Sha said, "You want to take the killer weapon?" "No, I'm just passing by." After saying that, Zichen left, leaving Yuan Sha behind. He was a little confused. After locking onto the location of the vein, Zichen returned to the station. When Miao Pengfei and Hu Jing saw Zichen, they immediately saluted him and respectfully called him sir. Looking at the two of them, Zichen knew that everything was clear. Next, they were completely Zichen's subordinates, and this place was also Zichen's property. After calling him sir, Miao Pengfei said, "Zichen, you're too late. We've already mined a lot of the veins here, and no other veins have been found. I'm afraid you won't make a lot of money this time. By the way, how did you take over?" Zichen raised 3 fingers and said, 30 million streams of power. When Miao Pengfei heard this, his eyes widened. He didn't expect it to be so expensive. "Actually, it's not that much. It's more like a half sale." Zichen smiled. If they had known in advance that there was a blackstone vein in the periphery, they definitely wouldn't have sold it even if the price was 100 times higher. Even so, it was because of Duni's face. One had to know that his reputation was definitely not limited to just 30 million streams of power. "Let's get ready to look for him." Zichen looked at the two of them and said, "I found something outside." Miao Pengfei's expression changed as he asked, "It can't be that killing crystal lode again, right?" "No, it's something else," Zichen said. "Tell them that the reward is very generous, but they only need to be in the second force realm or above." Miao Pengfei nodded. Hu Zheng hesitated. Zichen looked at him. "What do you want to ask?" Hu Jing said awkwardly. "I have some people from the Jutian city. Can they go and help?" Back then, Zichen had been schemed against in Jutian city. Many people had misunderstood him. Originally, this place was under Hu Zheng's control. Since Zichen was in the Pofa city, he brought almost all the people in the city over. It was also from then on that he and Miao Pengfei each managed a station. Now Zichen was his boss. Naturally, he had to tell him the truth. Zichen smiled. "You don't have to ask me. You're the one in charge here. As long as you trust them, you can put them in an important position." Zichen returned to the Pofa city and went straight to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. At the door, he saw Michael and the others. They were coming out of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. They didn't look like they were here to cause trouble. Instead, they looked like they had just finished shopping. Zichen was a little surprised. When they saw Zichen, they sneered. Michael took out a piece of blackstone and waved it at Zichen. "The best part is yet to come." After that, the group walked away proudly. Zichen was left with a confused face. After entering the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Maria walked over and followed Zichen upstairs. She said as they walked, "Master, Kant sent a message yesterday. A group of people is following them outside. Wherever they go, those people will follow. It seems that they are also looking for the mineral vein." Zichen understood why Michael and the others were smiling. He smiled and said, "I know." Maria turned around and was about to go downstairs. Zichen suddenly said, "Prepare some martial crystals and give them to the people who came here to deliver the black stone. Tell them it's a reward for Mi-Chi and the others. After all, this mineral vein was discovered by Mi-Chi and the others. Now that its value was announced, they should be rewarded." "Okay." Zichen went upstairs and sat on a chair. Then, he started to daydream. These days, he seemed to be very busy. He didn't even have time to cultivate. And now, it seemed that he still had to go to the world where the Soul Mountain was. After thinking about it carefully, Zichen decided to wait for a while. He asked Maria to find a way to contact Kant and ask him to come back. 3 days later, Kant came back. Zichen asked, "How's the situation?" Kant said, "We chased them away, but they still didn't give up. They are following us for several miles. It's obvious that they have other ideas. Ignore them." Zichen didn't have to worry about this. Phoebe and the others didn't seem to be easy to deal with. It was good enough as long as they didn't find trouble with others. If others found trouble with them, they were simply courting death. Zichen looked at Kant and said, I called you back this time to ask you, are there many spell breakers in the city? Definitely not as many as spirit spell breakers, but there are still many of them. Kant asked curiously, Why do you ask this question? Zichen said, I plan to have you find more spell breakers to search for or veins together. Other than the usual rewards, anyone who finds a blackstone or vein will be rewarded with an inner core, regardless of who it is. If the or vein is big enough, he will be guaranteed to advance to the 6 forces state. Although Zichen hadn't advanced to the 7 forces state, he had the ability to help others advance to the 6 forces state. For example, Kant could advance so quickly because of Zichen's gift back then. Zichen's reward was naturally targeted at those low-level spell breakers. Michael and the others found some spirit spell breakers to cause trouble. If he also found spirit spell breakers to search for or veins, there would be conflicts. If they found or veins and others said that they found them, it would be troublesome. Therefore, Zichen directly found spell breakers. Their status was higher, and spirit spell breakers wouldn't dare to mess around. Although the daily expenditure was great, as long as they could successfully find a blackstone or vein, Zichen would make a huge profit. Zichen didn't believe that they couldn't even find a blackstone or vein outside such a big city. Okay, I'll go find them now. It shouldn't be a problem. Zichen gave high rewards to those spell breakers every day. Otherwise, Phoebe and the others wouldn't be happy. Therefore, he believed that the others would agree. Kant left. He guessed that Miao Pengfei should have found all the people. But at the thought of those shadow destroyers, Zichen still decided to go to the Soul Mountain first. After all, it was easier to communicate with shadow destroyers. Chapter 51-47. Zichen headed to the Soul Mountain. Along the way, he met 2 teams of spell breakers, but they avoided him. The Soul Mountain was a hidden place. He did not want to be discovered. After arriving at the Soul Mountain, he was warmly welcomed. Time was tight, so Zichen explained his intentions. The old man was surprised. He said, Why don't I accompany you? Zichen shook his head. The old man was the backbone here. If he left, the other shadow destroyers would not be at ease. Moreover, Zichen was not sure what would happen outside. He did not dare to take the risk. I'll go! At this moment, Xiaowei stood out from the crowd. She was the one who brought Zichen here and changed the fate of the Shadow Destroyer clan. After refining the black stone Zichen gave her, she could speak now. She no longer needed to communicate with her soul. The old man looked at Zichen. Zichen nodded. This was what he had been thinking since the beginning. Xiaowei's soul aura fluctuated violently. She was very excited, because she could go out and see the outside world. In the end, Zichen only took Xiaowei and left. Because this was just a trial, he could not bring too many people. The 2 began to return. Walking in the forest, Xiaowei looked around curiously. She was like a bird out of a cage. Sometimes she would ask some questions. In the past, she only dared to wander around nearby. She would not go so far. No one could see Xiaowei, but there were some accidents. So when they were about to reach the periphery of the mountain, the 2 deliberately waited for the sky to turn dark. After dark, all the adventurers would go back. Almost no one would spend the night outside. When the sky turned dark, the law-breaking beasts would come out. But to Zichen, these law-breaking beasts were not a threat. After killing 2 along the way, the 2 walked out of the mountain. The sky was still dark. Zichen did not return to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Instead, he took Xiaowei directly to the teleportation location. In this Dharma-breaking city, there were many law-breakers. They could sense Xiaowei's presence. This was the first time Xiaowei had come to a city. Even though it was night, she was still very envious when she saw these buildings. Zichen spoke very little along the way. In the eyes of others, Zichen was the only one hurrying along in the dark. When they arrived at the entrance, Zichen opened a spatial door and the two of them walked out. Now that they had left Pofa City, there was no need to rush. The two of them walked at a normal speed toward the encampment. As the sky brightened, Zichen arrived at Miao Pengfei's base. It was Xiaowei's first time seeing so many humans. She looked around curiously. None of the people walking around could see her. Zichen met with Miao Pengfei. The other party had already prepared some people. Currently, there were 300 people. Zichen said, "Bring more things. We need to build a camp in the early stages. This mining will take a long time. Safety first." In the outer perimeter, everyone's cultivation levels were generally very low. Add to that the threat of the lawbreaker beasts, and everyone had to be careful. Furthermore, from what Miao Pengfei and the others knew, besides lawbreaker beasts, there were also shadow destroyers, which were the most terrifying. As for the secret of the shadow destroyer beasts, Zichen did not purposely explain it to them. It would be less troublesome if fewer people knew about it. Because they needed to build a camp in the early stages, in order to speed up the process, Miao Pengfei stopped mining and formed a team of thousands. This team followed Zichen. They brought the resources and walked toward the Blackstone mine in a grandiose manner. At night, everyone was divided into dozens of small teams and gathered around the bonfire. The bonfire shone brightly, but everyone still had a strong sense of uneasiness. This was even more obvious on the third night. This was because there were already Shadow Destroyer beasts here. Shadow Destroyer beasts killed people. Whether they could survive depended entirely on their own luck. "Don't worry. With Master Zichen here, I guarantee that nothing will happen to you." Miao Pengfei saw that everyone was nervous, so he immediately comforted them. However, there were too many teams here, and the area was too wide. Those who were with Zichen were naturally not afraid, but those who were not, especially those in the outer perimeter, were even more worried when they heard this reassurance. It proved that there really were Shadow Destroyer beasts here. Seeing everyone's uneasiness, Zichen said loudly, "Don't worry. As long as a Shadow Destroyer beast appears, I can see it no matter how far away it is. What you should be most worried about now is the lawbreaker beasts that might come in groups, not the Shadow Destroyer beasts." With Zichen's words, everyone was completely relieved. As for the lawbreaker beasts, their large team was not afraid at all. Zichen led the team and walked for a full 8 days before reaching their destination. At first, everyone was very worried and afraid of encountering Shadow Destroyer beasts. However, after several nights, they did not encounter any Shadow Destroyer beasts, and no one had any accidents. Everyone was relieved. Of course, they did not know that there was a Shadow Destroyer beast following them along the way. When they were still some distance away from the mineral vein, Zichen signaled for the team to move forward at normal speed. Meanwhile, he brought Xiaowei and sped up towards the mineral vein. When they arrived, Zichen realized that there seemed to be more Shadow Destroyers here. When the Shadow Destroyers saw Zichen, they immediately surrounded him. Some of them were looking at Xiaowei. Xiaowei started to communicate with them. After all, she used to be like these beings. Perhaps they shared a common language. As expected, after a short while, both sides were able to communicate normally. "Let them stay away from this mineral vein." Zichen pointed to an area in the distance and said, "Next, I will get people to build some buildings there. They will live there from now on." Xiaowei immediately communicated with the Shadow Destroyers and quickly got a response. Everyone started to retreat. During this time, Zichen did not forget to remind them not to attack other humans. These Shadow Destroyers did not have any objections. Because they had black stones, they did not need to rely on devouring souls to survive. This was what Xiaowei had said in advance. In the future, Zichen would provide them with black stones. Xiaowei went to arrange everything. Zichen stayed here and waited for Miao Pengfei and the others to arrive. Half an hour later, the main force arrived. With this mountain peak as the center, they started to build a few stations within a few thousand zhang radius. Miao Pengfei walked to the side of the mountain peak and looked at the traces of digging. He asked, "These are the things?" Zichen nodded and said, After these buildings are completed, leave the miners here. For every piece of ore you dig out, you will be rewarded with 5 strands of energy. $1 for 5 strands? Not 5 strands a day? Miao Pengfei was taken aback. Their rewards in this peripheral area were calculated by the day. Zichen said again. $1 for 5 strands. Such a high reward. Even I want to work here. Miao Pengfei looked shocked. What is this thing? Why is it so expensive? You also said it's expensive. Then don't make any mistakes. Zichen reminded him. These black stones are very useful to me. Miao Pengfei patted his chest and said, Don't worry. I can station here and supervise personally. Zichen smiled and patted Miao Pengfei's shoulder. During this period, I really need you here to supervise personally. In the future, I will transfer more people here. Chapter 5148. The plot is stuck and will be updated tomorrow. Thunder Force will not be updated today. It is currently in your hands. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.